Millionaire's son was born blind, until the poor little girl discovered the shocking truth. He was the only son of a millionaire, born blind, silent, and trapped in darkness. Doctors gave up. His father locked away the pain behind mansion walls. Years of hopelessness, until a poor little girl with bare feet and a cracked bucket walked into his life and uncovered a truth no one dared to see. Hey there, beautiful souls. Welcome back to the channel. Or if this is your first time here, welcome to a story that's going to absolutely wreck you in the best way possible. I'm so glad you're here. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. Are you cozy at home, on a lunch break, listening while you work? I want to know. And listen, if you haven't subscribed yet, please do it right now. This story is going to take you on a journey you won't forget, and I promise you, my channel is full of these powerful, emotional tales that'll stay with you long after the video ends. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss a story that might just change how you see the world. Now, let's dive deep into this one. Owen Vincent was born into a world he would never see. The first time he opened his eyes, the delivery room held its breath, waiting for that spark of recognition, that flutter of response to light. But his tiny pupils remained fixed and distant, looking at everything and nothing at all. The doctors exchanged glances. Harrison Vincent gripped his wife's hand tighter, and in that moment, before any diagnosis was even whispered, a father's heart began to break. Give him time, they said. Newborns don't focus immediately. But time was cruel. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. And Owen's beautiful dark eyes never tracked movement, never followed his mother's face, never responded to the expensive mobiles that dangled above his designer crib. By his first birthday, the diagnosis was official: congenital blindness. Cause unknown. Prognosis permanent. Harrison Vincent was not a man who accepted the word permanent. He was a millionaire philanthropist who had built his empire on the principle that every problem had a solution if you threw enough resources at it. So he did what he did best. He spent money, mountains of it. He transformed the Vincent estate into a medical fortress, filling the hallways with the world's leading specialists, the most cutting-edge equipment, and the newest experimental treatments. Doctors came from Switzerland, from Japan, from Johns Hopkins, and the Mayo Clinic. They ran tests. They performed surgeries. They filled Owen's small body with medications and his father's ears with promises. But Owen remained in darkness. The surgeries left scars, not just on his body, but deeper. Each failed procedure taught him that hope was a lie, that touch meant pain, that the people in white coats would hurt him no matter how gently they spoke. He learned to go silent during examinations, to withdraw into himself, to make his body very still and very small. By the time he was 10 years old, Owen Vincent barely spoke. He flinched when anyone reached for him, even in kindness. His world had shrunk to the safe, predictable corners of the mansion where nothing ever changed and nothing ever hurt. And Harrison buried his grief in work. The estate became a monument to sterile perfection, every surface gleaming, every corner controlled, every variable managed. No laughter echoed through the marble halls. No music played. The only sounds were the mechanical hum of medical equipment and the hollow silence of two people living in the same house, but worlds apart. Harrison stopped hosting charity galas, stopped attending foundation meetings in person, stopped pretending that his life was anything other than an elaborate monument to failure. The staff walked on eggshells, speaking in whispers, moving like ghosts through a mausoleum. They pitied the boy, sweet Owen, who sat by his second-floor window for hours, tracing invisible patterns on the glass with trembling fingers, trying to imagine the gardens below that everyone described, but he could never see. Mrs. Chun, his nanny, did her best. She read to him, though books were just sounds without pictures. She described colors, though the words meant nothing. She held his hand during the endless medical appointments, whispering comfort that felt increasingly hollow. "You're so brave, Owen," she would say. But Owen didn't feel brave. He felt alone. He felt like a problem that couldn't be solved, a disappointment that couldn't be fixed, a darkness that had swallowed his father's joy and left nothing but a cold, mechanical routine in its place. 10 years of this. 10 years of silent meals and failed treatments, and the growing certainty that this was all his life would ever be. Until a Tuesday in late April, when everything changed. Peyton William had exactly 4 possessions to her name. 3 smooth stones she'd collected from the riverbed behind the homeless shelter. 1 broken blue crayon, worn down to a nub. A single feather from a bird she'd never been able to identify. And a cracked plastic pail, bright yellow with a chunk missing from the rim, that held these treasures like they were diamonds. She was 8 years old, barefoot, wearing a donated dress 2 sizes too big that she'd belted with a piece of twine. Her honey brown hair, tangled in knots her mother, didn't have time to brush anymore. But her eyes held a brightness that poverty and tragedy hadn't managed to extinguish. Her mother, Diana William, stood beside her at the service entrance of the Vincent estate, smoothing down Peyton's hair with work-worn hands that still trembled slightly. "Remember what I told you?" Diana's voice was gentle but firm. "You stay close while I work. Don't touch anything expensive. Don't bother anyone important. This job, baby, this job could mean everything for us. Can you be good?" Peyton nodded solemnly. She understood more than most 8-year-olds should have to. Understood that Daddy was gone, that the cancer had taken him fast, and the medical bills had taken everything else. Understood that the apartment was gone, that the shelter was temporary, that this job as a part-time gardener's assistant was the tiny thread of hope they were both clinging to. "I'll be invisible, Mama. Promise." Diana kissed her forehead, tasting salt and hope and desperation. "Not invisible, baby. Just careful." Mr. Castellano, the head gardener, was a gruff man with kind eyes who reminded Peyton of her grandfather. He nodded at Diana, barely glanced at the small girl with the cracked bucket, and led them toward the eastern gardens. "Spring planting," he explained, his accent thick and warm. "The bulbs need to go in before the ground gets too warm. You'll help me with the soil preparation, yes?" Diana nodded eagerly. She would have agreed to anything. Peyton watched her mother disappear into the work, hauling bags of rich, dark soil, digging with focused intensity, trying to prove she was worth keeping. And Peyton tried to be good, tried to stay put on the stone wall where Mr. Castellano had told her to sit. But the Vincent estate was like nothing she'd ever seen. The homeless shelter had gray walls and fluorescent lights, and the smell of industrial cleaner trying to mask desperation. This was like something from the fairy tales the library lady used to read. Gardens that stretched forever, fountains with water so clean it sparkled like magic, flowers and colors she didn't have names for. Her bare feet found the grass, soft and cool and perfect. Her cracked bucket swung from her hand as she wandered, not meaning to disobey, just pulled forward by wonder. She found the West Garden by accident, drawn by the sound of water, musical and peaceful. And there, beside a marble fountain so beautiful it hurt to look at, sat a boy. He was alone. That struck Peyton first, the loneliness radiating from him like cold. In a house this big, with grounds this beautiful, why was he sitting by himself? He was maybe a little older than her, dressed in clothes so expensive they probably cost more than everything Peyton had ever owned combined. Dark hair, pale skin, and very, very still. His hands rested on the marble edge of the fountain, fingers trembling slightly as they traced the carved patterns. His face was tilted upward, like he was listening to something she couldn't hear. Peyton approached without fear. She'd never learned to be afraid of people, only of losing them. "Hi." The boy jerked, his whole body going rigid. His head turned toward her voice, and Peyton saw his eyes for the first time. They were beautiful, deep brown, framed with dark lashes, but they looked past her, through her, at nothing at all. Unfocused, distant, blind. The word formed in her mind without judgment, just recognition. "Who?" His voice was barely a whisper, rusty like he didn't use it much. "Who's there?" "I'm Peyton." She plopped down on the fountain's edge beside him, swinging her bare feet. "What's your name?" He hesitated so long she thought he might not answer. "Owen. This your house?" Another pause. "Yes. It's really pretty. I bet the fountain sounds nice." "It does." Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, that someone understood that sound could be beautiful when sight wasn't possible. "It sounds like sparkles," Peyton finished, tilting her head. "Like if water was magic." Owen's unseeing eyes widened. "Yes," he breathed. "Exactly. No one had ever understood before. No one had ever talked to him like this. Without pity, without careful distance, without treating him like a fragile thing that might shatter. "Can I show you something?" Peyton asked, already reaching for his hand. Owen flinched violently, yanking his arm back. "Don't. It's okay," Peyton said gently, not offended. "I won't hurt you. Promise. Here, you can touch my hand first if you want. See? Just skin. Just me." She held her small hand out, palm up, waiting. Owen's fingers trembled in the air between them. Touch meant doctors. Touch meant needles and procedures and pain. Touch meant, but her voice was so kind, so patient. Slowly, like a bird landing on an uncertain branch, his fingertips brushed her palm. Warm, soft, small. Not a medical glove. Not an examination. Just a hand. "See?" Peyton smiled, even though he couldn't see it. "Not scary. Now come on. I found the best mud by those trees over there. It's perfect for making stuff." Mud. Owen's voice held confusion and something else. Something that might have been curiosity, buried deep beneath years of fear. "Yeah, you can make anything with good mud. Castles, animals, whatever. And it feels really cool. Smooth and squishy and alive. Come on." Before Owen could protest, before fear could override the tiny spark of interest, Peyton gently tugged his hand. And Owen Vincent, who hadn't played in 10 years, who barely left his safe corners of the mansion, who had forgotten what it felt like to be a child instead of a patient. Owen stood up and followed her. What happens next will change everything. Because in the mud and laughter and play, something impossible is about to occur. Something the doctors said would never happen. But first, there's a truth buried in this mansion. A secret hidden in medical files and sealed contracts. A conspiracy of greed that stole a boy's sight and broke a father's heart. And Peyton William, with her bare feet and cracked bucket and curiosity brighter than any jewel, is about to stumble onto it. The mud was perfect, dark and rich and cool, tucked beneath the willow trees at the far edge of the West Garden, where the irrigation system kept the soil perpetually soft. Peyton had discovered it within her first 10 minutes at the estate, the kind of treasure only a child who'd spent months without toys could truly appreciate. She knelt in the grass, her cracked yellow bucket beside her, and scooped a handful of the dark earth. "Okay, give me your hands." Owen stood frozen above her, his whole body tense with uncertainty. Every instinct screamed danger. Unknown situations meant pain. New experiences meant failure. He should go back to his window, back to his safe corner where nothing changed and nothing hurt. But something in Peyton's voice, something bright and unafraid and completely without pity, made him slowly, carefully lower himself to his knees. "Hands out, palms up," Peyton instructed. Owen obeyed, trembling. The mud hit his palms with a cool, wet slap. He gasped, jerking slightly, but Peyton's hands were already on his wrists, gentle, grounding. "It's okay. It's just earth. Feel it. Smooth and squishy, right? Now squeeze it. Make it into a ball." Owen's fingers curled hesitantly around the mud. It was cold but not unpleasant. Soft, yielding. It moved with his touch instead of against it. He squeezed, and the sensation was strange, novel, almost nice. "Good." Peyton laughed, delighted. "Now you're getting it. Here, I'm making a turtle. You can make whatever you want. Just let your hands tell you what shape it wants to be." For several minutes, there was only the sound of the fountain and their breathing and the soft squelch of mud being shaped by small hands. Owen worked slowly, carefully, his face a mask of concentration. He couldn't see what he was making, but his fingers found a shape, round, with small protrusions that might have been legs. "What is it?" Peyton asked, not critically, just curious. "I don't know," Owen admitted. His voice was still whisper soft, but there was something new in it, something that might have been the ghost of pleasure. "What does it look like?" Peyton tilted her head, examining his creation with the seriousness of an art critic. "I think it's a star. See? 5 points, kind of lumpy, but that makes it better. Like a real star, not a perfect one." "A star," Owen repeated. He'd never seen a star, but he'd heard about them, distant, bright, unreachable. He'd always thought they sounded lonely. "Yeah, it's really good, Owen. You're good at this." No one had ever said he was good at anything except being patient during procedures. Something tight in Owen's chest loosened, just a fraction. Blue feels cool like water, right? Peyton said suddenly, washing her hands in the fountain. That's what blue is. And green. Green smells alive like this grass. That's how I think about colors. Not what they look like, but what they feel like. Owen went very still. You think about it that way? Well, yeah. I figured if you can't see them, maybe you can feel them instead. Like red. Red is warm like the sun on your face. And yellow is happy like laughing. Does that make sense? Owen's unseeing eyes were suddenly bright with moisture. In 10 years, hundreds of doctors and specialists and therapists had tried to help him understand the world. Not one of them had thought to translate it into his language. Not one had asked what colors might feel like instead of look like. It makes perfect sense, he whispered. Peyton grinned, even though he couldn't see it. Cool. Now come on, wash your hands, and I'll show you how to make the water spray through your fingers. It's really fun. For the first time in years, Owen Vincent laughed. It was a small sound, rusty and uncertain, but it was real. And somewhere in the mansion's medical wing, Mrs. Chun, passing by a window, stopped dead in her tracks at the sound of it. Mrs. Chun found them an hour later, still by the fountain. Peyton was describing clouds. They're like when you breathe out in winter and see your breath, but bigger and floated, while Owen listened with an intensity that suggested he was memorizing every word. Both children were covered in mud. Owen's expensive clothes were streaked with dirt, his hair mussed, his usually pale cheeks flushed with exertion, and something that looked dangerously like joy. Owen. Mrs. Chen's voice cracked with shock and something else. Hope. Maybe. Or fear at hoping. What on earth? Who are you? Peyton jumped up, suddenly remembering her mother's instructions. Don't bother anyone important. I'm Peyton. My mom was working in the gardens, and we were just playing, Owen said quietly, turning his face toward Mrs. Chen's voice. His hand reached out instinctively, finding Peyton's arm and holding on like a lifeline. Her name is Peyton. She's my friend. Mrs. Chen's hand flew to her mouth. Owen didn't have friends. Owen didn't play. Owen didn't touch people voluntarily, or speak in full sentences to strangers, or look anything other than silent and withdrawn. I see. She managed, her voice thick. Well, I think perhaps we should get you cleaned up before. Before what? The voice came from behind them, cold and sharp as winter. Harrison Vincent stood on the garden path, having come from the East Wing, where he'd been reviewing medical journals. He was 52 but looked older, his face carved with lines of grief and exhaustion. He wore a suit, even at home, armor against feeling too much. His eyes took in the scene. His son, filthy and disheveled. A strange, poor-looking child with bare feet and a cracked bucket. Mud everywhere. Mr. Vincent, sir, I was just about to. Mrs. Chun began. But Harrison wasn't looking at her. He was staring at Owen, at the mud on his clothes, at the way his son was holding the strange girl's arm, at the expression on his face that Harrison hadn't seen in so long he'd almost forgotten what childhood joy looked like. Who are you? Harrison's voice was controlled, but beneath it ran currents of something dangerous. Peyton stepped forward, chin up despite her racing heart. This man was scary in the way powerful people were. Not mean, exactly, but hard. Like he'd forgotten how to bend. I'm Peyton Williams, sir. My mom is working with Mr. Castellano. We were just playing. I'm sorry if we weren't supposed to. Playing. Harrison's eyes cut to his son. Owen, go inside. Mrs. Chun will get you cleaned up. We have Dr. Morrison coming at 3 for your weekly evaluation. Owen's face fell. The light in his eyes dimmed. His hand dropped from Peyton's arm, and his shoulders curled inward, the familiar posture of a child trying to disappear. But, Owen started. Inside. Now. Mr. Vincent. Mrs. Chun said softly, desperately. He was laughing. Did you hear? He was covered in filth and exposed to potential infection. Harrison's voice was ice. I'm aware of what he was doing. Owen, I won't ask again. Owen's face went blank. The mask he perfected over years of disappointments. Without a word, he turned and walked toward the house, his hands out slightly to navigate the familiar path. Each step looked like it took enormous effort. Peyton watched him go, something fierce and hot burning in her chest. You made him sad. Harrison's cold eyes swung to her. I beg your pardon. He was happy. Really happy. Maybe for the first time in forever. And you made him go be sad again. Peyton's hands balled into fists. She knew she should be quiet. Knew this man could make her mama lose this job. but the injustice of it burned too bright to contain. That's mean. For a moment, Harrison Vincent, millionaire philanthropist, empire builder, man who commanded boardrooms and silenced critics with a look, stood speechless before an 8-year-old in a too-big dress. Mrs. Chen's face had gone white. "Peyton, you mustn't. Mr. Vincent, please. She's just a child. She doesn't understand." "No." Harrison's voice was very quiet, very dangerous. "She doesn't understand. She doesn't understand that my son has a compromised immune system, that exposure to bacteria could lead to infection, that his last surgery site is still healing, that his health is precarious and precious and not something to be gambled on mud and play." He turned to Mrs. Chun. "Find this child's mother. Explain that her daughter is not to interact with Owen again. If it continues, her employment will be terminated. Am I clear?" "Yes, sir," Mrs. Chun whispered, her heart breaking for all of them. Harrison walked away without another word, his back rigid, his pace controlled. He didn't look back. Peyton stood in the garden, mud drying on her hands, watching the mansion swallow Owen whole. Tears burned in her eyes, not for herself, but for the boy who'd laugh like it was a miracle and then had it taken away. "Come on, sweet girl," Mrs. Chun said gently, taking her hand. "Let's find your mother." But as they walked, Mrs. Chun glanced back at the mansion, at the window where she knew Owen would be sitting, and thought, "That was the first time in 7 years I've heard him laugh. The first time he's touched someone without fear. The first time he's acted like a child instead of a patient." And Harrison just shut it down. She understood why. God, she understood the fear, the desperate need to protect a son who'd already suffered so much. But understanding didn't make it hurt less. Inside the mansion, Harrison Vincent climbed the stairs to his study and poured scotch with shaking hands. He'd seen Owen's face light up. He'd seen his son, his silent, broken son, smile. And it terrified him, because hope was dangerous. Hope led to crushing disappointment. Hope led to experimental treatments that failed and surgeries that left scars and promises that turned to ash. Better to keep things controlled. Better to keep Owen safe within the boundaries of medical science and proven routines. Better not to hope at all. He drank and told himself he'd done the right thing. He almost believed it. Diana William found her daughter sitting on the garden wall, silent tears tracking through the dirt on her face. "Baby, what happened?" Mrs. Chan said. Diana's voice was tight with fear. "This job. They needed this job. I made a friend, Mama. His name is Owen, and he can't see, but he's so nice, and he liked the mud, and we were laughing. And then his daddy got mad and said I can't play with him anymore, and it's not fair because Owen was so happy and now he's sad again, and..." The words tumbled out in a rush, broken by hiccuping sobs. Diana gathered her daughter close, stroking her tangled hair, her own heart aching. She'd heard the whispers from Mr. Castellano, the Vincent boy, blind since birth, the tragedy of it, the father's obsession with finding a cure. "Sometimes," Diana said softly, "people who hurt a lot make choices that don't seem fair. Mr. Vincent, he's trying to protect his son. Can you understand that? But Owen doesn't need protecting from friends," Peyton said, her voice muffled against her mother's shoulder. "He needs protection for being lonely." Diana had no answer for that. The wisdom of children was sometimes too sharp, too true. "Mrs. Chan said you have to stay away from the boy. Can you do that? For me? Please." Peyton pulled back, wiping her nose on her sleeve. Her eyes were red but determined. "I'll try, Mama. I promise I'll try." But even as she said it, she looked at the mansion's windows, wondering which one was Owen's, wondering if he was sitting there right now, wondering if he'd gone back to tracing invisible patterns on glass and living in the prison of his father's fear. She touched the mud still caked under her fingernails, proof that the last hour had been real, that Owen's laugh had been real. And Peyton William, 8 years old and stubborn as stone, made a decision. She would try to obey. She would try to stay away. But if Owen needed her, if she saw him alone and sad, she would find a way. Because some rules were worth breaking. Some friendships were worth fighting for. That night, Owen sat at dinner with his father in the cavernous dining room. They ate in silence, as always. Harrison at the head of the long table, Owen 4 seats down, close enough for safety, but far enough that conversation wasn't expected. Mrs. Chun served them both, her movements quiet and efficient. Owen pushed his food around his plate, not hungry. His hands still remembered the cool slide of mud, the warmth of Peyton's laugh. His ears still echoed with her voice explaining colors in a way that finally made sense. Owen. Harrison's voice cut through the silence. Dr. Morrison confirmed that your healing is progressing well. We'll begin the next round of consultations next week. There's a specialist from Germany who's developed a new approach to optic nerve regeneration. Another specialist. Another round of hope that would curdle into disappointment. Owen said nothing. Did you hear me? Yes, sir. Harrison set down his fork with careful precision. The girl, Peyton. You understand why you can't see her again. Owen's hands clenched in his lap. She was nice to me. I'm sure she was. But your health. I was happy. The words burst out before Owen could stop them, louder than he'd spoken in months. I was happy, Dad. For the first time in forever, I was just happy. Not a patient. Not broken. Just a kid playing in the mud. Harrison's jaw tightened. You're not broken. Yes, I am. Owen's voice cracked. That's all I am to you. A problem to fix. A disappointment. You can't even look at me without seeing everything you couldn't buy, or cure, or control. Owen. But Owen was standing now, his chair scraping back, his unseeing eyes bright with tears. She made me feel normal, like I was worth talking to for reasons that had nothing to do with being blind. And you took that away. You take everything away. He turned and walked toward the stairs, his hands finding the banister with practiced ease, his steps sure despite the tears blurring vision he didn't have. Harrison sat frozen at the table, his son's words hitting like physical blows. A problem to fix. A disappointment. Is that what Owen thought? Is that what all these years of desperate searching for a cure had communicated? Mrs. Chin stood in the doorway, witnessing it all. When Harrison's eyes met hers, she saw the question there. Did I do the wrong thing? She said nothing. It wasn't her place. But in her heart, she knew the answer. In the small apartment above Mr. Castellano's garage that came with Diana's position, Peyton lay in the narrow bed she shared with her mother and stared at the ceiling. Mama, she whispered, do you think Owen's okay? Diana stroked her daughter's hair. I hope so, baby. His house is so big and pretty, but it feels sad. Like all the rooms are crying, but trying to be quiet about it. Diana's throat tightened. Sometimes the biggest houses are the loneliest. We were lonely in the shelter, Peyton said softly. But we had each other. Who does Owen have? It was a question Diana couldn't answer. Outside, the Vincent mansion glowed against the night sky. 47 acres of manicured perfection, millions of dollars in architecture and art, and a little boy sitting alone by a window, tracing patterns in the glass and trying to remember the sound of laughter. In the medical wing, in a locked filing cabinet that hadn't been opened in years, documents waited in the darkness. Documents marked confidential. Documents that held secrets capable of destroying everything Harrison Vincent had built, and everything he believed about his son's condition. But those secrets wouldn't stay buried forever, because Peyton William had a gift for finding things that were lost, and the truth was about to claw its way into the light. If you're feeling this story, do me a favor, drop a comment, and tell me what you think of Peyton and Owen so far. Are you rooting for them? I love hearing from you all, and your comments genuinely make my day. 3 days passed. For Peyton, they felt like 3 years. She helped her mother in the gardens, staying carefully on the eastern side of the estate, far from the west garden with its marble fountain and willow trees. She was good. She was obedient. She kept her promise. But every moment, she thought about Owen sitting alone by his window. Diana noticed her daughter's distraction, the way Peyton's eyes drifted toward the mansion, the way her hands stilled in the middle of tasks, the way her usual brightness had dimmed like a candle starved of oxygen. You miss him, Diana said softly on the third afternoon, both of them on their knees planting perennials in the rose garden. Peyton nodded, not trusting her voice. Diana sighed, wiping soil from her hands. Baby, I know it's hard, but Mr. Vincent made the rules clear. If we break them, we lose this job. And if we lose this job, we go back to the shelter. I know, Mom. Peyton's voice was small. I'm trying to be good. I really am. I know you are, sweet girl. But that night, lying in their narrow bed, Peyton stared at the ceiling and made a decision. She couldn't disobey directly, couldn't march up to Owen during the day when everyone could see. But the Vincent estate was huge, the garden sprawling, and nighttime brought shadows that could hide a small, determined girl. She would be careful. She would be quick. She would just check on him, just once, to make sure he was okay. Just once. The Vincent mansion looked different at night. The windows glowed like amber eyes, warm lights spilling onto the manicured lawns. Security lights illuminated the main paths, but the gardens, the vast, sprawling gardens, held pockets of shadow perfect for hiding. Peyton slipped out of the apartment above the garage at 9:30, when her mother's breathing had gone deep and even with exhaustion. She wore dark clothes, moved silently on bare feet that knew how to find quiet paths, and carried nothing but her courage and a cracked yellow bucket she couldn't bear to leave behind. The west garden was exactly as she remembered. Fountains still burbling softly, willow branches swaying in the evening breeze. And there, barely visible in the light spilling from the mansion's second floor, sat a small figure on the stone bench. Owen. Peyton's heart squeezed. He was in the exact same spot where she'd found him 3 days ago, hands resting on the marble fountain edge, face tilted upward toward stars he couldn't see. Completely alone. She approached quietly, not wanting to startle him. Owen, she whispered. His head jerked toward her voice, his unseeing eyes wide. Peyton. Yeah, it's me. She sat beside him, their shoulders almost touching. I'm not supposed to be here. I know. His voice was soft, careful. You'll get in trouble. Probably. But I wanted to make sure you were okay. Owen was quiet for a long moment. Then, barely audible, I'm not okay. But I'm used to it. The simple honesty of it broke Peyton's heart. Your dad, does he ever let you just play? Just be a kid? Owen shook his head. There's always a treatment. Always a schedule. There's always something wrong with me that needs fixing. He paused, his fingers tracing anxious patterns on the marble. Do you know what it's like to be someone's disappointment? To see, or, I guess, to feel, how much they hurt because you're broken. You're not broken, Peyton said fiercely. Everyone treats me like I am. The doctors, the nurses, Mrs. Chun when she thinks I can't hear her crying. And my dad. Owen's voice cracked. He looks at me like I'm a puzzle he can't solve. Like I'm this constant reminder of his failure. Peyton reached out slowly, giving him time to pull away, and took his hand. His fingers were cold and trembling. You're not a failure. You're not a puzzle. You're just Owen. And Owen is nice and smart and funny when he lets himself be. I was funny. Owen's voice held surprise. The other day, when you said the fountain sounded like sparkles made of water. That was funny and perfect. Peyton squeezed his hand. You're perfect exactly like you are. No one had ever said that to him. Not once in 10 years. Owen's throat worked, tears threatening. Will you? He stopped, afraid to ask, afraid of one more disappointment. Will I do what? Will you come back? Even though you're not supposed to? I know it's selfish and you could get in trouble, but I need. Yes. Peyton didn't hesitate. I'll come back. Every night if I can. We can meet here, and your dad won't know, and we can just talk and play and be friends. Okay. Owen nodded, something fierce and grateful breaking across his face. Okay. But right now, Peyton said, standing and tugging his hand, you need to feel something amazing. Come on. Where? Trust me. And because something in Peyton's voice made trust feel possible, Owen stood and followed. She led him past the fountain, past the willow trees, to the far corner of the west garden where Mr. Castellano had been working on a new section. Fresh soil, turned and rich. Flower beds planted with night-blooming jasmine that released fragrance into the darkness. And best of all, a small pond, recently installed, with lily pads and smooth stones and water that caught the moonlight like scattered diamonds. Okay, Peyton said, positioning Owen at the pond's edge. Take off your shoes. What? Shoes off. And socks. Trust me. Owen obeyed hesitantly, his pale feet finding the cool grass. Peyton took both his hands and guided him forward until his toes touched water. He gasped. It's cold. I know. But wait, step in. Just ankle deep. The stones are smooth. You won't slip. Owen stepped into the pond, and the sensation exploded through him. Cool water lapping at his ankles, smooth stones under his feet, the gentle movement of living water around his skin. It was nothing like the sterile examination rooms or the controlled environment of the mansion. It was wild, real, alive. Now look up, Peyton instructed, standing beside him in the water. Well, not look, but feel up. Feel the air on your face. The night is touching you, Owen. The whole world is touching you right now. And it's so beautiful. Owen tilted his face upward. The evening breeze kissed his skin, carrying the scent of jasmine and fresh earth and something green and growing. The water moved around his ankles like gentle hands. The darkness he lived in suddenly felt less like a prison and more like possibility. This is freedom, Peyton whispered. This is what being alive feels like when nobody's trying to fix you. Owen's breath caught. Something was happening, something he didn't have words for. The world was pressing in on him, not threatening or painful, but present, insistent, real. His unseeing eyes were open, pointed at the night sky where stars blazed in patterns he'd never witnessed. And, for just a moment, just a heartbeat, he could have sworn he felt them. Not saw them, but felt them, like pressure points of light against the darkness. Peyton, he breathed. Something's different. Different how? I don't know. It's like the darkness isn't as dark. Like there's something pushing against it. His voice was awed, confused, almost frightened. Is this normal? Peyton studied his face in the moonlight. His pupils, usually so fixed and distant, seemed to flutter slightly, like they were trying to focus. But that was impossible, wasn't it? The doctors had said his blindness was permanent. Maybe your brain is just waking up to all the feelings, Peyton suggested. Like it's so full of good stuff that it's getting stronger. But something niggled at the back of her mind. The way Owen's father had reacted so strongly to their playing. The locked medical wing she'd glimpsed through windows. The hushed conversations between staff members that stopped when anyone came near. What if there was more to Owen's blindness than anyone had told him? Before she could pursue the thought, lights blazed across the garden. Owen Vincent. Mrs. Chin's voice rang out, sharp with panic. Owen, where are you? Oh no. Owen whispered, fear flooding back. I didn't tell anyone I was coming outside. They're going to be so angry. Go, Peyton urged, already backing toward the shadows. Go quick. Tell them you just want a fresh air. Don't mention me, okay? But, go. I'll be fine. Owen stumbled out of the pond, fumbling for his shoes, and called out, I'm here. Mrs. Chun, I'm here. Peyton slipped into the shadows beneath the willow trees, her heart hammering. She watched as Mrs. Chun rushed toward Owen, relief and fury warring on her face. What were you thinking? You can't just wander off at night. Your father is beside himself, and your feet are soaking wet. Owen, you could catch pneumonia. You could. I just wanted to feel the water, Owen said quietly. I'm sorry. I just needed to feel something real. Mrs. Chin's anger deflated slightly. She wrapped a cardigan around his shoulders and guided him back toward the mansion, muttering about reckless children and heart attacks and irresponsibility. But as they passed under a security light, she glanced at Owen's face and stopped. His eyes. Something about his eyes was different. They seemed more present, somehow, less distant, almost like they were trying to track movement. Owen, she said slowly, how many fingers am I holding up? Mrs. Chun, I can't see. I know, but just humor me. How many? Owen turned his face toward her voice, his brow furrowed in concentration. I don't know, but there's something lighter where your hand is, like a shadow that isn't as dark. Mrs. Chin's hand flew to her mouth. Sweet Jesus, she whispered. In 10 years of blindness, Owen had never described variations in darkness, had never indicated any response to light or shadow or movement. Until tonight, until a poor little girl started teaching him that the world was beautiful instead of dangerous. Harrison was in his study, 3 fingers deep into a scotch bottle, when Mrs. Chun knocked. Come in, he said tersely. She entered, Owen's hand in hers. The boy looked small and worried, his wet feet leaving prints on the expensive carpet. I found him in the West Garden, Mrs. Chin said, by the new pond. Harrison's eyes went cold. Owen, you know the rules. You don't go outside alone at night. You could have fallen, gotten hurt. I know. Owen's voice was barely audible. I'm sorry. Harrison rubbed his face, exhaustion evident in every line. Go to your room. We'll discuss the consequences in the morning. Owen turned to leave, but Mrs. Chin's hand on his shoulder stopped him. Mr. Vincent, she said carefully, there's something you should know. Owen described seeing variations in shadow, light and dark. He's never done that before. Harrison's head snapped up. What? When I held my hand up, he said he could see something lighter. Not clearly, but that's impossible. Harrison was on his feet, crossing to Owen in 3 strides. He pulled a penlight from his desk drawer and shone it directly into his son's eyes. Owen, do you see this light? Owen flinched from the brightness. His pupils were constricted. It was tiny, barely visible, but Harrison had looked at his son's eyes through enough examinations to know that was a response. A physiological, measurable response to light stimulus. The penlight clattered to the floor. Ow! Harrison's voice cracked. Owen, can you see the light? Not see exactly, but it's bright. It hurts a little, like something pushing against the dark. Owen sounded frightened and awed in equal measure. Dad, what does it mean? Harrison dropped to his knees, hands shaking as they framed his son's face. His eyes, the cold, controlled eyes of a man who'd spent 10 years building walls, were suddenly bright with something dangerous and terrifying. Hope. It means, he whispered, that something has changed. It means we need to call every specialist, run every test, figure out what's happening. Mrs. Chun watched the scene, her mind racing. Owen had been the same for 10 years. Completely, consistently blind. No responses, no variations, no changes despite countless treatments. Then a little girl came into his life. A little girl who played with him in mud, who made him laugh, who taught him that the world could be kind instead of clinical. And suddenly, impossibly, his eyes were responding to light. Mr. Vincent, she said softly, maybe before we call the specialists, we should consider what changed. What's different now than it was a week ago? Harrison's jaw tightened. He knew exactly what she was implying. The girl, Peyton. But that was ridiculous. Medical conditions didn't respond to friendship. Blindness didn't heal because a child played in mud. That wasn't science. That wasn't possible. Except Owen's pupils had just constricted in response to light. Except something was different. Run the standard vision response tests, Harrison ordered, his voice steadying into the familiar cadence of control. Tonight, I want baseline measurements. Then we'll schedule a full neurological workup for tomorrow. Dad, Owen said quietly, I'm tired. Can't we do this in the morning? Harrison looked at his son, really looked at him, and saw the exhaustion, the confusion, the fear of one more round of tests and procedures and disappointments. Yes, he said, the word costing him. Yes, we can wait until morning. Go to bed, Owen. We'll figure this out. Owen nodded and let Mrs. Chen guide him from the study. Harrison stood alone in the silence, staring at the penlight on the floor. His son's pupils had responded to light. After 10 years of darkness, something had changed. And the only variable that was different was a barefoot girl with a cracked bucket who'd made his son laugh. He poured another scotch with trembling hands and tried to decide if that made him grateful or terrified. In the shadows of the garden, Peyton had watched the entire scene unfold. She saw the lights in the study, saw Owen being led inside, saw the urgency and confusion on Mrs. Chen's face. Something had happened. Something big. She needed to understand what was really going on with Owen. Why were there so many doctors? Why was he trapped in that mansion like a prisoner? Why did everyone treat his blindness like a shameful secret instead of just a thing that was true about him? The questions burned in her mind as she slipped back toward the garage apartment. But as she passed the mansion's east wing, the medical wing, she noticed something. A door, slightly ajar, light spilling into the hallway, and voices, hushed, urgent. Peyton knew she should keep walking. I knew curiosity was dangerous, but she'd never been good at walking away from mysteries. She crept closer, pressing herself against the wall, listening. Reaction is unprecedented, a male voice was saying. Dr. Morrison, maybe the one who came weekly. In 10 years, we've seen 0 pupillary response. If he's suddenly showing light sensitivity, what could cause that? Harrison's voice, tight with controlled emotion. Spontaneous neural regeneration is extremely rare, but not impossible. Or the doctor paused. Or the original diagnosis was wrong. Silence. Heavy and dangerous. Dr. Garrison's diagnosis was confirmed by 14 specialists. I know, sir. I'm just saying, if Owen is developing vision now, we need to reassess everything. including reviewing his original medical files and treatment history. Those files are sealed. Mr. Vincent, if there's any chance. The files are sealed, Dr. Morrison. Owen's early treatment was complicated. The records are. They're not relevant now. Peyton's breath caught. Sealed files. Treatment history that wasn't relevant. Why would a father hide his son's medical records? Unless there was something in them he didn't want to find. I want a full workup tomorrow, Harrison continued. MRI, ERG, visual evoked potentials, everything. If my son's vision is returning, I want to know why and how to support it. Of course, sir. I'll make the arrangements. Footsteps approached the door. Peyton fled, her bare feet silent on the marble floors, her heart hammering. Something was wrong. Something about Owen's blindness didn't make sense. And Harrison Vincent was hiding something in sealed medical files that he didn't want anyone to see. Peyton might be 8 years old, poor, and uneducated, but she knew a cover-up when she heard one, and she was going to find out the truth. Because sometimes the darkest secrets hide in the brightest mansions. And sometimes a poor girl with nothing to lose is exactly the person brave enough to drag them into the light. What Peyton was about to discover would shatter the Vincent family's carefully constructed world and expose a conspiracy of greed that had stolen 10 years of a child's life. But first, she had to get into that medical wing. And the clock was ticking. Drop a comment and let me know, what do you think is in those sealed files? What's Harrison hiding? I love reading your theories. The medical test began at 7 the next morning. Owen sat in the examination chair in the mansion's medical wing, electrodes attached to his temples, his face tilted towards screens and lights he still couldn't truly see. Dr. Morrison worked with clinical efficiency, running test after test while Harrison stood behind the observation glass, arms crossed, face unreadable. Look straight ahead, Owen, Dr. Morrison instructed. I'm going to flash different intensities of light. Tell me if you perceive any change. The first flash came. Owen's pupils constricted, minutely, but measurably. Bright, Owen whispered. Something bright pushed against the dark. Dr. Morrison's eyes widened. He adjusted settings, tried again. Another flash, this time from the left side. Owen's head turned slightly toward it. There, that side. Something lighter. Behind the glass, Harrison's hands gripped the windowsill until his knuckles went white. 3 hours of testing. Visual evoked potentials showing neural activity in the optical pathways that had been dormant for a decade. Electroretinography revealing photoreceptor responses that shouldn't exist in someone with Owen's diagnosis. MRI scans that made Dr. Morrison go very quiet and requested Harrison join him in the hallway. Mr. Vincent, the doctor said, his voice carefully controlled. Owen's optical structures are intact. The physical architecture for vision exists and appears to be. Waking up. Harrison's jaw clenched. That's impossible. Dr. Garrison confirmed. I know what Dr. Garrison confirmed. I've read his reports. Dr. Morrison pulled off his glasses, rubbing his eyes. But sir, if the physical structures for vision have been intact all along, that means Owen's blindness wasn't structural. It was neurological. Something was suppressing the signals between his eyes and his brain. What could cause that? Dr. Morrison hesitated. Trauma. Certain medications. Neurological disorders that spontaneously resolve. Or he stopped. Or what? Or induce suppression. There are pharmaceutical interventions that can temporarily blind someone by disrupting neural pathways. They were experimented with decades ago for certain psychiatric conditions, but abandoned because... Are you suggesting someone deliberately blinded my son? Harrison's voice was dangerously soft. No, of course not. I'm just trying to understand how intact optical structures could be non-functional for 10 years and suddenly begin responding. Dr. Morrison pulled out his tablet, scrolling through data. Mr. Vincent, I need access to Owen's original treatment files. The medications he was given in infancy, the early intervention protocols. Those files are sealed. Sir, if there's any chance those early treatments contributed to his condition. Dr. Garrison was a respected specialist. Everything he did was designed to help Owen, not harm him. Then let me see the records and confirm that. Dr. Morrison's voice held quiet insistence. If Owen's vision is returning, we need to understand why, so we can support the process. That means knowing everything about his medical history. Harrison stared at the doctor for a long moment. Then, voice hard as iron, run supportive therapies, visual stimulation exercises, light exposure protocols. But the early files remained sealed. Are we clear? Dr. Morrison's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Yes, sir. As Harrison walked away, the doctor stood in the hallway, troubled thoughts churning. Something about this case didn't add up. And the more Harrison Vincent refused to allow investigation into Owen's early treatment, the more Dr. Morrison's suspicions grew. But he was being paid very well to treat, not to question. So he swallowed his doubts and returned to the examination room where a 10-year-old boy sat surrounded by machines, hoping against hope that this time, finally, the darkness might recede. Peyton spent the day distracted, earning concerned looks from her mother. You're pulling those weeds up by the roots too hard, baby, Diana said gently, kneeling beside her in the herb garden. What's going on in that head of yours? Mama, if someone was sick and their daddy had medicine that could help but didn't give it to them, would that be wrong? Diana's hand still. That's a serious question. Where's this coming from? Just wondering. Peyton Marie William, you've got that look. The one that means you're thinking about things you shouldn't be thinking about. Diana turned her daughter's face toward her. This is about the Vincent boy, isn't it? Peyton's silence was answer enough. Baby, listen to me. That family is pain we can't understand. Mr. Vincent is doing what he thinks is best for his son. It's not our place to question. But what if what he thinks is best is actually hurting Owen? Peyton, I'm just saying, Mama. What if grown-ups can be wrong? What if they make mistakes and then can't admit it because admitting it would mean they did something really bad? Diana pulled her daughter close, troubled by the wisdom in those young eyes. Sometimes grown-ups do make mistakes, but we still have to respect their authority. And we still have to keep this job. Promise me you'll stay out of it. Peyton nodded against her mother's shoulder, but she didn't promise, because some promises were impossible to keep. That night, Owen slipped out to the West Garden again. He told Mrs. Chun he was going to bed early, exhausted from the day's testing. But the moment her footsteps faded down the hall, he dressed in dark clothes and navigated the familiar path to the garden. Peyton was already there, sitting on their bench by the fountain. You came. Owen breathed, relief flooding his voice. Told you I would. Peyton scooted over to make room. How'd the test go? Owen settled beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. They said something's changing, that my eyes are responding to light. Dr. Morrison said it's impossible, but it's happening anyway. That's amazing, Owen. Is it? His voice was smaller now, uncertain. What if it's just temporary? What if I start to see things and then lose it again? What if? His breath hitched. What if I see my dad's face and it's disappointing? What if the first thing I ever see is how much I've hurt him? Peyton took his hand, squeezing tight. Owen Vincent, you listen to me. You haven't hurt anybody. You're not responsible for being born blind, and you're not responsible for your dad's feelings. Those are his to deal with, not yours. But, no buts. If your eyes start working, that's wonderful. If they don't, you're still wonderful. You're still Owen. And Owen is smart and kind and my best friend. Okay. Owen's throat worked. Best friend. Well, yeah. I mean, unless you don't want. I do. The words came out fierce and fast. I really, really do. I've never had a friend before. Just doctors and nurses and people who felt sorry for me. I don't feel sorry for you, Peyton said honestly. I feel sorry for everyone who never got to know you because they were too busy feeling sorry. Owen laughed, that rusty, beautiful sound that was becoming easier each time. You say the weirdest, best things. It's a gift. Peyton stood, tugging him up. Now come on. I want to try something. She led him to a section of the garden she'd discovered that afternoon while her mother worked. A small grove of trees with low-hanging branches perfect for climbing. Okay, there's a tree here. Big oak. Branches start low. I'm going to help you climb it. Owen's whole body went rigid. Climb? Peyton, I can't. I'm blind, I'll fall. You won't fall because I'll be right beside you. I'll tell you where every branch is, where to put your hands and feet. Trust me, it was a test. Owen knew it. Trust meant risk. Trust meant letting someone guide him into danger. Trust meant everything his father had taught him not to do. But Peyton's hand was warm in his, and her voice held no pity, just certainty. Okay, he whispered. I trust you. Climbing the tree was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. Peyton directed every movement. Okay, branch right above your head. Reach up, There you go. Now foot on the knot to your left. Others left. Perfect. Owen's heart hammered. His hands shook. But with each branch higher, something fierce and wild bloomed in his chest. He was climbing. He was doing something dangerous and difficult and real. How high are we? He asked, breathless. About 8 feet. Can you feel the breeze? It's stronger up here. And the leaves. Reach out to your right. Yeah, those. They're moving, see? Feel how they flutter. Owen touched the leaves, felt them dance under his fingers, felt the wind moving through them like breathing. This is incredible, right? Now hold on tight, because I'm going to describe what I see from up here. Peyton settled on a branch beside him and painted the world with words. Okay, straight ahead is the mansion, all lit up, windows like gold squares. And past that, the town, little lights scattered like someone spilled glitter. Behind us, the gardens go on forever, all dark and mysterious. And up above, she stopped, breath catching. What? Owen asked. What's up above? Stars, Owen. So many stars. They're everywhere, like someone punched holes in the sky, and light is pouring through. They're not holding still, they're twinkling, like they're alive. And they're every color, silver and white, and some that are almost blue. Owen tilted his face upward. He couldn't see the stars, but he felt them. Felt the vastness of the sky, the infinity of space, the smallness of himself in the best possible way. Tell me more about blue, he whispered. You said blue feels cool like water. What else? Blue is. Peyton thought hard. Blue is peaceful. Blue is big. Blue is what safety feels like. Your dad's office is all brown and dark, right? That's serious and heavy. But blue is light and open. Blue is like a hug from the sky. Something was happening to Owen's vision. As Peyton spoke, as he tilted his face toward the stars, he swore the darkness was less absolute. There were variations, shades of black and gray, and, in the direction of the mansion, something lighter. Not clear, not formed, but different. Peyton, he breathed, I think I'm seeing dark and light. Not colors yet, but something. Something's changing. Peyton looked at his face in the moonlight and saw his pupils moving, tracking, searching, trying desperately to focus. Owen, your eyes. They're moving. They're looking at things. They are. Wonder and terror wore in his voice. Yeah, it's like they're waking up. For a moment, they sat in the tree together, two children suspended between earth and sky, between blindness and sight, between the broken past and an impossible future. What if it's because of you? Owen said quietly, the tests were all normal yesterday. Then I met you, and we played, and now my eyes are responding. What if you're the reason? That's silly, Peyton said, but her voice was uncertain. Eyes don't heal because someone's nice to you. Maybe they do. Maybe being happy matters more than medicine. It was a beautiful thought, but something nagged at Peyton. The conversation she'd overheard, the sealed medical files, Harrison's resistance to investigating Owen's early treatment. What if Owen's blindness wasn't something that needed to heal? What if it was something that needed to be stopped? Owen, can I ask you something? Anything. Your early treatments, the ones when you were really little, do you remember any of them? Owen frowned, thinking. Not really. Just feelings. Being cold a lot. Needles. Crying, and no one coming. Why? Do they give you medicine? Like pills or shots? I think so. There were always shots. Mrs. Chun said they were to help my brain develop properly, to give my optical nerves the best chance. But they made me feel sick. Fuzzy. Like I was wrapped in blankets I couldn't escape. Peyton's stomach turned. Medication that made him fuzzy. That suppressed neural activity. That kept his intact eyes from functioning. Do you still take medicine? Some. Vitamins mostly, Dad says. Dr. Morrison brings them weekly. Why all the questions? Peyton bit her lip. She didn't want to worry him. Didn't want to plant suspicions about his father without proof. But the pieces were starting to form a picture that made her blood run cold. Just curious, she said lightly. Come on, we should get down before someone notices you're gone. They climbed down carefully, Peyton guiding every step. When they reached the ground, Owen didn't let go of her hand. Thank you, he said softly, for being my friend, for teaching me that the world can be beautiful, for making me feel brave. You are brave, Owen. You're the bravest person I know. They parted ways, Peyton to the garage apartment, Owen to his windowside prison. But both of them felt a shift that had occurred. They weren't just friends anymore. They were conspirators, allies, two children against a world that had decided one of them should stay broken. The next 3 days fell into a pattern. During the day, Peyton worked with her mother, staying carefully visible and obedient. But she watched everything. She noted when Harrison left for business meetings. She observed the security guards' rounds. She mapped the mansion's layout from the outside, identifying which windows belonged to which rooms. The medical wing was on the east side, first floor. 3 windows, one of which stayed lit late into the night. Harrison's private office within the wing, where he reviewed medical journals and made phone calls to specialists. And where, Peyton suspected, the sealed files were kept. At night, she met Owen in the garden. They climbed trees, waded in the pond, and she taught him the world through texture and sound and feeling. And each night, his vision seemed incrementally stronger. "There's a shape there," he said on the 3rd night, pointing toward the fountain. "Something lighter than the trees. Is that the fountain?" "Yes." Peyton grabbed his hands, jumping with excitement. "Owen, you're seeing shapes." "Not clearly. Everything's blurry and gray. But shapes, outlines. It's something." On the 4th day, Dr. Morrison ran another round of tests. This time, Owen could track a penlight as it moved slowly from left to right. His visual acuity was still profound impairment, maybe 20/400, but it was measurable, quantifiable, real. Harrison stood behind the glass, watching his son follow light with his eyes, and felt his carefully constructed world crack at the foundations. "This is unprecedented," Dr. Morrison said, unable to contain his excitement. "Mr. Vincent, in 15 years of practice, I've never seen spontaneous vision recovery at this rate. Whatever's causing it, could it reverse?" Harrison's voice was sharp. "Could he lose it again?" I don't know. Without understanding the mechanism, I can't predict the trajectory." Dr. Morrison turned to face him fully. "Sir, please, let me review his early treatment files. If there's anything in his medication history that could explain this." "No, Mr. Vincent." I said no, Dr. Morrison. "My decision is final." The doctor's jaw clenched. "Then I need to be frank with you, sir. If Owen's vision continues to improve, people are going to ask questions. Medical journals will want case studies. Other specialists will want to investigate. And eventually, someone will insist on reviewing his complete medical history. You can't keep those files sealed forever." Harrison's eyes went cold. "Watch me." That night, Peyton made her decision. She waited until her mother was asleep, then dressed in dark clothes and slipped out. But instead of heading to the garden to meet Owen, she circled toward the east wing. The medical wing's office window was dark. Harrison was in his study on the opposite side of the mansion. She'd seen the lights. The security guard was on his rounds of the perimeter. She had maybe 15 minutes. The window was locked, but it was old style with a simple latch. Peyton pulled a thin piece of metal from her pocket, a fragment from a broken garden tool, and worked it into the gap. The latch popped. Her heart hammered as she slid the window open and climbed through. The office was dark, smelling of antiseptic and paper. Moonlight through the window provided just enough illumination to see filing cabinets lining one wall, a desk stacked with folders, bookshelves crammed with medical journals. Peyton moved to the filing cabinets. Locked. Of course they were locked. She tried the desk drawers. Also locked. Frustration burned in her chest. She was so close. Wait. Behind the desk, partially hidden by a curtain, was an older cabinet. Wooden, not metal. The kind that might have been overlooked when switching to newer filing systems. Peyton pulled it open. Unlocked. Inside, folders. Lots of them. Organized by year. She pulled out the ones from Owen's birth year, 10 years ago, and flipped them open. Medical charts. Incomprehensible terminology. Drug names she couldn't pronounce. But one thing caught her eye. A prescription dated when Owen was 6 months old. Nuraxin, 50 milligrams daily. For management of neurological instability and seizure prevention. She knew that word. Seizure. Owen had never mentioned having seizures. She flipped through more pages. More prescriptions. Higher doses as Owen aged. Notes in Dr. Garrison's handwriting. Patient responding well to Nuraxin protocol. Visual cortex suppression, maintaining stability. Continue current dosage. Visual cortex suppression. Suppression. Peyton's hand shook as she photographed the pages with the cheap phone her mother had given her for emergencies. She didn't understand all the medical language, but she understood enough. Owen's blindness wasn't permanent. It was being maintained. Someone had been giving him medication that suppressed his vision. For 10 years. She was so focused on photographing documents that she didn't hear the footsteps in the hallway until they were right outside the door. The knob turned. Peyton's blood turned to ice. She dove behind the curtain, pulling it around herself just as the office door opened and lights blazed on. Harrison's voice, irritated. "I'm certain I left those charts here. Give me a moment." Another voice, "Dr. Morrison." "Of course, sir." Peyton pressed herself against the wall behind the curtain, barely breathing. Harrison crossed to the desk, not 3 feet from her hiding spot. She heard paper shuffling, a drawer opening. "Mr. Vincent," Dr. Morrison said carefully, "I feel compelled to say again that Owen's improvement is remarkable, but without understanding the cause. The cause is irrelevant. Managing the continuation is what matters. Sir, if there's something in his early treatment that contributed to his original condition, continuing a hide, it could be considered." "Could be considered what, doctor?" Harrison's voice went dangerously soft. "Say it." A pause. Then, quietly, "Malpractice. Or worse." The silence that followed was suffocating. "Dr. Garrison treated my son with cutting-edge therapies designed to give him the best possible outcome," Harrison said, each word precisely controlled. "If those therapies had unforeseen effects, that's a tragedy, not a crime. And raking it all up now, when Owen is finally improving, would serve no purpose except to destroy the foundation, ruin careers, and subject my son to legal scrutiny he doesn't deserve. So you're asking me to be complicit in a cover-up. I'm asking you to focus on helping Owen move forward, not dwelling on a past we can't change." Another pause. Then Dr. Morrison's voice, heavy with resignation. "I'll continue the supportive therapies. But if Owen's vision continues to improve and questions are asked, I won't lie. No one's asking you to lie. Simply to respect patient confidentiality and a father's right to privacy." Footsteps. The door opened. Voices fading down the hall. Peyton stayed frozen behind the curtain for a full 5 minutes before daring to move. Her whole body shook, adrenaline making her feel sick and electric. Harrison knew. He knew Owen's blindness had been caused by the treatment, and he was covering it up. She climbed back out the window, clutching her phone with its precious photographic evidence, and ran. Owen was waiting in the garden, worried. "You're late," he said when she finally arrived, breathless. "I was starting to think, Peyton, what's wrong? You're shaking." "Owen, I need to tell you something, and you're going to be really upset. You're scaring me." Peyton took his hands, squeezing tight. "I broke into the medical office tonight. I found your old files. Owen, your blindness, it wasn't a birth defect. It was the medicine. Dr. Garrison gave you something called Nuraxin that suppressed your visual cortex. You've been blind for 10 years because of medication." The color drained from Owen's face. "What? I have pictures. I heard your dad talking to Dr. Morrison. He knows Owen. He knows the treatment caused it, and he's covering it up." Owen pulled his hands away, stumbling backward. No, that's, my dad wouldn't." "Owen, my dad has spent millions trying to fix me. Why would he do that if he knew the treatment caused it?" "I don't know. Maybe he didn't know at first. Maybe Dr. Garrison lied to him. Maybe he found out later and couldn't face it. I don't know why, Owen, but I know what I saw." Owen was shaking, his unfocused eyes bright with tears. "So my whole life, 10 years of darkness, of being broken, of disappointing everyone, was it all because some doctor gave me the wrong medicine? I'm so sorry. And my dad knew." Owen's voice cracked. "He knew I didn't have to be like this, and he just let it continue." "Owen, I think he's scared. I think admitting the truth would mean facing what happened, and he can't. I don't care what he can't do." Owen's voice rose, anger and grief tearing through him. "I've been in darkness for 10 years. Do you know what that's like? Do you know how many times I wished I was dead because I couldn't stand being the broken disappointment anymore?" Peyton grabbed his hands again, fierce. "You are not broken. You never were. The treatment was broken. The doctors were broken. But you're perfect, Owen. And now that we know the truth, we can fix it. We can make them stop whatever they're still giving you. and your eyes will heal completely. Ow. If I tell my dad I know, he'll just deny it. He'll lock me up tighter. Owen's breath hitched on a sob. I can't trust him anymore. I can't trust anyone except you. Then trust me. I'll figure out what to do with this information. But we need proof we can't deny. More than just old files. We need something current. Something that shows they're still doing it. Owen wiped his eyes with shaking hands. Dr. Morrison brings me vitamins every week. He says they're supplements to support my vision. What they're not. What they're still giving me the stuff that keeps me blind. Peyton's eyes widened. When will he come next? Tomorrow afternoon. 3 o'clock. Okay. Tomorrow, when he gives you the medicine, don't take it. Hide it. Give it to me, and I'll find someone who can test it. But if I stop taking it, they'll notice. Good. Let them notice. Let your vision improve more. That's more proof. Owen was quiet for a long moment, processing everything. His whole world had just been torn apart and rearranged into a horrifying new shape. His father, the man he'd spent 10 years trying not to disappoint, had let him stay blind, had covered up the truth, had prioritized protecting a medical foundation over his own son's sight. Peyton, he said quietly, what if my vision comes back and the first thing I see is my father's face and all I feel is hate? Then we deal with that when it happens. But right now, we focus on getting you free, on ending this, on making sure no one can ever do this to you again. She pulled him into a hug, the first real hug Owen had experienced in years. He clung to her, this tiny, fierce girl who'd crashed into his life and cared about him for reasons that had nothing to do with his blindness or his father's money. Thank you, he whispered into her tangled hair. Thank you for seeing me when everyone else just saw a problem. Always, Peyton whispered back. I'll always see you, Owen. All of you. They stood in the garden, two children holding each other against the weight of adult sins and covered-up crimes. Above them, stars blazed in patterns Owen still couldn't quite see, but was getting closer to every day. And in the mansion, Harrison Vincent sat in his study with a glass of scotch and a mounting sense that everything was about to fall apart. Because truth, once awakened, was impossible to bury again, and the light was coming. What happens when a conspiracy of silence faces a little girl with nothing to lose and everything to fight for? What happens when a father's desperate need to protect his reputation collides with his son's right to the truth? The breaking point is coming, and when it hits, nothing will ever be the same. I want to hear from you. Are you feeling the tension? Drop a comment telling me what you think Harrison should do. Does he deserve redemption? Let's talk about it. Owen didn't sleep that night. He lay in his bed, staring at darkness that suddenly felt different. Not a permanent state, but a prison someone had locked him in. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the equation in his mind. 10 years of blindness equals 10 years of medication equals 10 years of his father choosing reputation over truth. His father had let him suffer. The thoughts circled like a vulture, picking at the bones of every memory. Every surgery that had failed. Every specialist who'd looked grave said permanent. Every moment Owen had felt like a disappointment, like damaged goods, like a problem that couldn't be solved. It had all been a lie. By the time dawn light crept through his window, light he could now perceive as a gradual lessening of darkness, Owen had made his decision. He would do exactly what Peyton suggested. He would stop taking the medication. He would collect evidence. And he would get his sight back, no matter what it cost, even if it meant losing his father in the process. At 7 a.m., Mrs. Chun brought breakfast to his room, as she did every morning. You look tired, sweet boy, she said, setting the tray on his desk. Bad dreams. Something like that. Owen's voice was carefully neutral. He couldn't let anyone suspect what he knew. Not yet. Well, eat up. Dr. Morrison is coming at 3, and you know how thorough his examinations are. Owen's stomach turned to the thought. Dr. Morrison, who brought the vitamins every week. Dr. Morrison, who was either complicit in the cover-up or willfully blind to it. Dr. Morrison, who would hand Owen the pills that kept him in darkness. Not today. Mrs. Chun, Owen said carefully, do you think my vision will keep improving? She was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. I pray every night that it will, Owen. Every single night. You deserve to see the world. You deserve everything. The genuine love in her voice made Owen's chest ache. Mrs. Chun didn't know. She was innocent in this conspiracy. The realization was oddly comforting, At least one person in his life loved him without lies attached. "Thank you," he whispered, "for always being kind to me, even when I was difficult." "You've never been difficult, sweet boy. It just hurt. There's a difference." After she left, Owen touched his breakfast but couldn't eat. His stomach was too twisted with anxiety and anger and the growing, terrifying hope that maybe he was about to get his life back. Peyton woke to her mother, shaking her shoulder. "Baby, wake up. Mr. Castellano needs help with the South Garden today. Big project." Peyton's eyes flew open. "What time is it?" 7:30. "What? I need to be free by 3. It's important, Mama." Diana's expression tightened. "Peyton, if this is about the Vincent boy." "It's not. I mean it is, but Mama, please. I can't explain yet, but I need you to trust me. Something really important is happening at 3 o'clock, and I need to be there." Diana studied her daughter's face. The determination, the fierce protectiveness, the maturity that shouldn't exist in an 8-year-old's eyes. "You're scaring me, baby. I'm trying to help someone who needs help. Isn't that what you always taught me? To stand up for people who can't stand up for themselves." Diana's throat tightened. She had taught her that. Through every hardship, every loss, she taught Peyton that kindness mattered, that protecting the vulnerable was worth the risk. "Okay," she said softly. "I'll make sure you're free by 3. But Peyton, be careful. Whatever you're involved in, please be careful." "I will, Mama. I promise." The morning dragged like molasses. Peyton worked in the South Garden, hauling soil and planting flowers, but her mind was miles away. She kept rehearsing the plan. Owen would hide the medication. He'd give it to her. She'd find someone to test it. Maybe the free clinic in town where Mama had taken her after Daddy died. Someone who could confirm what those pills really were. And then they'd have undeniable proof. At 2:30, she told her mother she needed to use the bathroom in the main house. The apartment's plumbing was acting up again. Diana nodded distractedly, focused on the irrigation system she was trying to repair. Peyton slipped away, circling toward the west side of the mansion, where she could watch the medical wing entrance without being seen. At 2:45, Dr. Morrison's sleek black car pulled into the circular drive. Peyton's heart hammered as she watched him enter, carrying his familiar medical bag. This was it. The moment that would either confirm their suspicions or prove she was paranoid and wrong. "Please let us be right," she thought. "Please let there be proof." Owen sat in the examination chair, trying to keep his breathing steady as Dr. Morrison ran through the standard tests. "Excellent," the doctor murmured, watching Owen track a moving light. "Your visual acuity is definitely improving. I'd estimate you're at 20/300 now, maybe better. This is remarkable progress." "Owen, what's causing it?" Owen asked, keeping his voice curious rather than accusatory. "Honestly, I'm not certain. Spontaneous neural regeneration, perhaps. The brain is capable of remarkable healing under the right conditions." Dr. Morrison made notes on his tablet. "We'll continue the current protocol: vitamins, light exposure therapy, and visual exercises." He reached in his bag and pulled out a small bottle of pills. "Your weekly supplements. These are formulated to support optical nerve health and neural pathway development." Owen took the bottle with trembling hands. The pills inside looked innocuous, small, white, ordinary, but they were poisonous. They were the chains that had kept him in darkness. "Thank you," Owen said, his voice barely steady. "Take one now, please, and then one each morning with breakfast. I'll bring more next week." This was the moment. Owen's hand shook as he opened the bottle, tapped one pill into his palm. Dr. Morrison watched expectantly. Owen raised the pill to his mouth and pretended to swallow it, tucking it instead between his cheek and gum the way Peyton had instructed. "Good. Now, let's test your color perception. I'm going to hold up cards with different colored dots. Tell me if you can distinguish any variation." The examination continued for another 20 minutes. Owen kept the pill hidden in his mouth the entire time, fighting the urge to gag, praying Dr. Morrison wouldn't notice. Finally, mercifully, the doctor packed his equipment. "Continue to rest your eyes when they feel strained. Improvement is good, but we don't want to push too hard too fast. I'll see you next week, Owen." The moment Dr. Morrison left, Owen spat the pill into his hand and stared at it. Such a small thing. Such a tiny, innocent-looking capsule. Such enormous damage. He wrapped it carefully in tissue and tucked it into his pocket. Then he made his way downstairs, navigating the mansion with increasing confidence as his vision, even blurry and indistinct, gave him more information about his surroundings. The shapes were getting clearer. Doorways were distinct from walls now. Windows were bright rectangles. People were moving shadows with recognizable outlines. It was working. Even after just one missed dose yesterday when he'd accidentally dropped his vitamin in the toilet, his vision was noticeably sharper. What would happen after a week without the poison? A month? How much of his life had been stolen? Peyton met Owen in their usual spot in the West Garden at 4 o'clock, after Dr. Morrison's car had disappeared down the long driveway. "Did you get it?" she asked breathlessly. Owen pulled the tissue-wrapped pill from his pocket. "Here." He watched me take one, but I hid it in my mouth. Peyton carefully took the evidence, tucking it deep into her pocket. "I'll take it to the free clinic tomorrow. My mama knows when the nurse is there. She'll help me figure out what's really in it." "Peyton." Owen's voice was strained. "My vision is getting better. A lot better. I can see shapes now. Clear shapes. The fountain. I can tell it's round, that it has tears. I can see you're shorter than me. I can see the difference between the grass and the stone path." "Owen, that's amazing. It's terrifying." His hands balled into fists. "Because it means you were right. It means every single day of darkness was because of those pills. And my father," his voice cracked. "My father knew." Peyton took his hands, squeezing hard. "We're going to fix this. We're going to stop them from ever doing this to you again." "But how?" "If I tell him I know, he'll just deny it. He'll say I'm confused, that the medication was necessary. He's rich and powerful, and I'm just a kid. Who's going to believe me over him? Everyone will believe you when you can see. When your vision comes back completely, and it's obvious the only thing that changed was stopping the medication." Owen pulled away, pacing agitatedly. "What if he doesn't let it come back? What if when he realizes I'm improving too fast, he find a way to give me more medication, to keep me controlled?" The fear in his voice was rational and heartbreaking. "Then we make sure everyone knows," Peyton said firmly. "We don't keep this secret. We tell Mrs. Chun. We tell my mama. We make it public, so he can't hide it anymore. He'll destroy your family. He'll fire your mother. Make sure she can't get work anywhere. Let him try. My mama's stronger than he thinks. And some things are worth fighting for, even when you're scared." Peyton stepped closer, her voice fierce. "You're worth fighting for, Owen. You matter more than his reputation or his foundation or his pride. You matter." Owen's unseeing eyes, except they weren't entirely unseeing anymore, turned toward her voice. And for the first time, he could make out the shape of her face. Not features, not clearly, but the outline of her, the realness of her. "I can see you," he whispered. "Not perfect, but I can see your shape. Your hair, it's lighter than the background. And you're small. I knew you were young, but I didn't realize how small." Peyton laughed through sudden tears. "I'm scrappy, not small. There's a difference." Owen laughed too, the sound still rusty but becoming more natural. Then his face sobered. "Thank you. For believing me. For fighting for me. For being the only person who sees me as Owen instead of a tragedy, or a problem, or a medical case study." "Always," Peyton said. "Now come on. We should practice your vision. The better you can see, the harder it'll be for them to deny what's happening." That night, something shifted in the Vincent mansion. Mrs. Chin noticed it first. Owen came down to dinner and didn't trail his hands along the walls for guidance. He walked with confidence, his head up, his steps sure. "Owen," she said carefully, "how did you navigate the stairs so easily?" "I could see them," he said simply. "Not perfectly, but I could see the edges, the shadows. It's getting clearer, every hour." Harrison looked up from his phone, eyes sharpening. "Every hour?" "Yeah. This morning everything was blurry. Now I can see the definition. Depth. I can tell Mrs. Chun is wearing something dark. Is it blue?" "Navy," Mrs. Chun breathed. "Owen, can you distinguish colors?" "A little. Blues and greens from reds and yellows. It's like the world is coming into focus bit by bit." Harrison stood abruptly. "This is progressing too fast. We need Dr. Morrison here immediately." "Why?" Owen turned toward his father's voice, and for the first time in his life, he could see the outline of the man. Tall, broad-shouldered, rigid posture. "Isn't this what you wanted? For me to see?" "Of course, but rapid changes could indicate instability. Neurological issues. We need a monitor." You need to control it, Owen said quietly. The words dropped like stones. Harrison went very still. What did you say? I said you need to control it. Control me. Keep me manageable. Keep me from becoming a liability. Owen, you're not making sense. Are not? Owen's voice was rising now. 10 years of suppressed anger, finally finding release. Am I making perfect sense for the first time ever? Maybe my brain is finally working properly because I'm not being drugged into blindness anymore. Mrs. Chin gasped. Harrison's face went white. Owen, I don't know what you think you know. I know about Naraxin. The name exploded from Owen like a bullet. I know Dr. Garrison gave it to me when I was 6 months old to suppress my visual cortex. I know you've been keeping me blind for 10 years to cover up medical malpractice. I know everything. The silence that followed was deafening. Harrison's carefully controlled mask cracked. Who told you? Then his eyes hardened. The girl. That poor girl has been filling your head with paranoid fantasies. She showed me the medical files, the prescriptions, the notes, everything. You knew, Dad. You knew I didn't have to be blind, and you let it continue because admitting the truth would destroy the foundation. You don't understand. Then explain it to me. Owen's voice broke. Explain why my entire childhood was stolen. Explain why I spent 10 years in darkness, hating myself, wishing I was dead, when all you had to do was stop poisoning me. Mrs. Chun had her hand over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. The pieces were clicking into place for her too. The sealed files, Harrison's resistance to investigating Owen's early treatment, the mysterious vitamins that Dr. Morrison brought weekly. Oh my God, she whispered. Owen, is this true? Harrison's jaw clenched. Mrs. Chun, this is a private family matter. Is it true? She demanded, her voice sharp with fury. Have you been keeping this child blind intentionally? The situation is complex. Dr. Garrison made a mistake in Owen's early treatment, a mistake that had irreversible consequences. Exposing it publicly would have destroyed careers, bankrupted the foundation, and subjected Owen to years of legal scrutiny and media attention. I made a choice to protect my son. You made a choice to protect yourself. Owen screamed. You chose your reputation over my eyes. I chose to give you a stable life. If the foundation had been destroyed, we would have lost everything. This house, the medical care, the resources you needed. I didn't need resources. I needed a father who loved me more than he loved his public image. Owen turned and ran, really ran, using his improving vision to navigate the hallways with speed impossible just days ago. He knew where he was going. The West Garden. Peyton, the only person in his life who'd never lied to him. Harrison started after him, but Mrs. Chun blocked his path. Let him go, she said, her voice cold as winter. Mrs. Chun, let him go. You've controlled that boy's entire life. You've stolen his sight, his childhood, his trust. The least you can do is give him one moment of freedom. Harrison stood in the dining room, his empire crumbling around him, and felt the full weight of his choices crushing down. He thought he was protecting Owen. He thought he was choosing the lesser evil. A blind son who was financially secure versus a seeing son who'd grow up knowing his father had covered up malpractice. But looking at Mrs. Chin's disgusted expression, hearing his son's anguished screams echoing through the mansion, Harrison finally understood the truth. He hadn't protected Owen from anything. He just added his own betrayal to Dr. Garrison's crime. Peyton was waiting in the garden when Owen crashed through the hedges, sobbing and stumbling. She caught him as he fell to his knees, gathering him into her arms. He knew. Owen gasped between sobs. He admitted it. He knew I didn't have to be blind, and he chose to keep me that way. He chose his reputation over me. I'm so sorry, Owen. I'm so sorry. Everything, my whole life, it was all a lie. Every doctor, every treatment, every time he looked sad about my blindness, it was all fake. He was just protecting himself. Peyton held him while he shattered, while 10 years of betrayal and stolen sight poured out in anguished sobs. She stroked his hair and whispered comfort and let him break apart in the safety of her arms. Slowly, his breathing calmed. The sobs subsided into hiccuping breaths. Peyton, he whispered into her shoulder, I can see you. Not perfectly, but I can see the shape of your face. You're crying too. Of course I am. I'm crying for you. For everything you lost. Owen pulled back slightly, his blurry vision focusing on the outline of her face. "Don't cry. Please. You're the only good thing in my life. You're light and truth and everything that's real. I can't stand to see you sad. Then let me help you. Let me help make this right." "How?" "He's going to deny everything. He's going to say I'm confused or lying or that you manipulated me. Let him try." Peyton's voice went hard. "Tomorrow, I'm taking that pill to the clinic. We're getting it tested, and then we're going to expose what they did to you. The whole world is going to know. He'll destroy you. I don't care. Some things matter more than being safe. You matter more." Owen stared at her blurry face, at the fierce determination radiating from her small frame, and felt something crack open in his chest. She was 8 years old, poor, powerless, and she was willing to go to war against a millionaire for him. "How are you so brave?" he whispered. "I'm not brave. I'm just stubborn, and I really, really hate bullies." Despite everything, Owen laughed. Then he did something he'd never done before. He hugged her first, pulling her close with desperate gratitude. "Whatever happens," he said, "thank you for giving me back my sight. Not just my eyes, my ability to see the truth. You woke me up, Peyton, in every way that matters." They stayed like that, two children clinging to each other in a garden while the mansion loomed above them, full of secrets that were finally coming into the light. Inside the mansion, Harrison made a phone call. "Dr. Morrison, I need you here. Now, we have a situation." 30 minutes later, the doctor arrived to find Harrison in his study, a glass of scotch in hand and defeat in his eyes. "Owen knows," Harrison said without preamble. "About the Naraxin, about the cover-up, everything." Dr. Morrison went pale. "Al, the girl, Peyton William. She broke into the medical office and found the files." Harrison drained his scotch. "Owen confronted me tonight. He's not taking the supplements anymore. His vision is improving exponentially. Mr. Vincent, if this becomes public, I know what happens if it becomes public. The foundation gets sued into oblivion. Dr. Garrison's reputation is destroyed posthumously. I'm potentially charged with medical fraud and child endangerment. I'm aware of the consequences. Then what do you want me to do?" Harrison was quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly, "Tell me honestly as a physician, if Owen stops taking the Naraxin completely, will his vision return fully?" Dr. Morrison swallowed hard. "Based on the scans we've done, his optical structures are intact. If the neural suppression is removed, there's no medical reason he shouldn't regain normal or near normal vision. So he really didn't have to be blind. Not ever." "No, sir, he didn't." Harrison's hand shook as he poured another drink. "I told myself I was protecting him, that exposing the truth would hurt him more than blindness. But the truth is, I was protecting myself, my legacy, my foundation, and my son paid the price. What are you going to do?" Harrison looked at the doctor with eyes that had finally opened to the full scope of his own sins. "I'm going to let him see," he said quietly, "and then I'm going to face what I've done." The next morning, Peyton walked into the free clinic on Main Street with the pill carefully preserved in a plastic bag. The nurse at the desk looked skeptical, a poor girl with a cracked bucket wanting pharmaceutical analysis. But Peyton stood her ground. "Please, I think this medication is hurting someone. I just need to know what it really is." The nurse sighed. "Honey, we don't have the facilities for chemical analysis here. You'd need a lab." "Then tell me where to find a lab. Please, a boy's sight depends on this." Something in Peyton's desperate sincerity made the nurse pause. "Wait here." 20 minutes later, Peyton sat across from Dr. Sarah Chun, no relation to Mrs. Chun, a volunteer physician who worked at the clinic on weekends. "Tell me what this is about," Dr. Sarah said gently. And Peyton did. She told the whole story. Owen's blindness, the sealed files, the suspicious medication, the rapid vision improvement once he stopped taking it. Dr. Sarah listened with growing concern. When Peyton finished, she carefully took the pill. "I know someone at the county lab who owes me a favor. I can have this analyzed by Monday. But sweetheart, if what you're saying is true, this is serious. This could be criminal." "I know," Peyton said. "That's why we need proof." Dr. Sarah studied the determined 8-year-old in front of her and made a decision. "Give me your mother's phone number. I'll call with the results as soon as I have them. And Peyton, you're very brave. That boy is lucky to have you." Peyton walked out of the clinic with hope blazing in her chest. They were going to get proof. They were going to stop this. They were going to free Owen from the prison of his father's choices. She didn't know that back at the mansion, Harrison Vincent was making a choice of his own. That afternoon, Harrison called Owen into his study. Owen stood in the doorway, his improving vision allowing him to see his father clearly for the first time. The man looked older than Owen had imagined. Tired. Defeated. "Sit down, son," Harrison said quietly. "I'd rather stand." Harrison flinched at the coldness in his son's voice. "Owen, I need to say something, and I need you to hear it. I was wrong." Owen's jaw clenched. "That's it? That's your apology?" "I was wrong." "No, let me finish." Harrison's voice cracked. "I was wrong, and I was selfish, and I was a coward. Dr. Garrison made a terrible mistake when you were an infant. He gave you medication that suppressed your optical nerve development because he thought you were having seizures. You weren't. He misread the tests. By the time we realized the damage, you were already blind. And instead of admitting the mistake, I covered it up. Dr. Garrison was dying. Cancer, he had maybe 6 months. And exposing the malpractice would have destroyed everything he'd built. The foundation carried his name. His research had helped thousands of children. And I convinced myself that protecting that legacy was more important than your sight. You convinced yourself, or you just didn't want to face the scandal? Both. Harrison's honesty was brutal. I didn't want the foundation destroyed. I didn't want you to grow up as the poster child for medical malpractice. I didn't want to admit that I trusted the wrong person with your care. So I made a choice to maintain your blindness with low-dose Neuraxin and tell myself I was protecting you." Owen's hands shook with rage. "You weren't protecting me. You were protecting yourself." "I know, and I'm sorrier than you'll ever understand." Harrison stood, crossing to his son. "Owen, I can't undo what I've done. I can't give you back 10 years. But I can stop it now. No more medication. No more cover-up. Your vision will return fully, and whatever legal consequences I face, I'll face them. You think that makes it okay? You think saying sorry fixes a decade of darkness? No, nothing fixes this. But it's the truth, and you deserve the truth." Harrison's voice broke completely. "You deserved it 10 years ago, and I failed you. I'm failing you now by expecting forgiveness. But I need you to know, I love you, Owen. I've loved you every moment of your life, even when I made the worst possible choices." Owen stared at the blurry outline of his father, feeling emotions war in his chest. Rage and grief and betrayal, and underneath it all, buried deep, the small, desperate part of him that still wanted his father's love to mean something. "I can't forgive you," Owen said, his voice shaking. "Not now. Maybe not ever. I understand. But I need you to do something for me. Anything. When my vision comes back, when I can see clearly, I want the first thing I look at to be something beautiful. Not you. Not this house. Not the medical wing or the doctors or any of it. Something beautiful and real and untainted by lies." Harrison nodded, throat too tight to speak. And then Owen continued, "You're going to publicly admit what you did. All of it. You're going to face the consequences. Because if you don't, I will." "I will," Harrison whispered. "I promise." Owen turned to leave, then stopped at the door. Without looking back, she was right, you know. Peyton. She said some rules are worth breaking, and some people are worth fighting for. She's 8 years old, and she understood that better than you ever did. He left Harrison alone in the study with the wreckage of his choices and the faint, terrible hope that maybe, someday, his son might find a way to forgive him. But Harrison knew he didn't deserve that hope. Some betrayals were too deep for redemption. 3 days later, Owen woke to a world of color. It happened all at once, the blurriness sharpening overnight into crystal clarity. He opened his eyes, and for the first time in his conscious memory, he could see the ceiling of his bedroom, white with ornate molding, a chandelier catching morning light and scattering it in rainbow prisms. His own hands, pale and slender, resting on the blue comforter. Blue. Real, actual blue. Cool and peaceful and exactly like Peyton had described. Owen sat up, gasping, as the world flooded into his vision in overwhelming detail. His room. He could see his room. The bookshelf stuffed with Braille books he'd never be able to read normally. The window overlooking gardens that were impossibly, breathtakingly green. And in the mirror across from his bed, himself. Owen stumbled to the mirror and stared. Dark hair, longer than he'd realized. Brown eyes, bright with tears. A face that was thin and pale, but unmistakably his own. "I can see," he whispered to his reflection. "I can see." The door burst open. Mrs. Chun rushed in, summoned by some instinct. "Owen, I heard." She stopped dead. "Owen, can you?" He turned to her, really seeing her for the first time. Round face, kind eyes, graying hair pulled back in a bun. The woman who'd been more of a mother to him than anyone. "Mrs. Chun," he breathed. "You're beautiful." She burst into tears, pulling him into a fierce hug. "Oh, sweet boy. Oh, thank God. Thank God." Harrison appeared in the doorway, his face pale with hope and fear. Owen looked at him, really looked, and saw a stranger. A tired, middle-aged man with grief carved into every line. A man who looked simultaneously relieved and terrified. "Owen." Harrison's voice shook. I can see everything," Owen said flatly. "Colors, shapes, details. Everything you stole from me for 10 years. Harrison flinched like he'd been struck. I know. You're sorry. You've said that." Owen turned back to Mrs. Chun. "Where's Peyton? I need to see Peyton." "In the East Gardens with her mother," Mrs. Chun said gently. "Go on. Go see her." Owen ran. He ran through the mansion, seeing it clearly for the first time. The marble floors, the expensive artwork, the sterile perfection that had been his prison. He burst through the French doors into the gardens and stopped, breath stolen by the sheer beauty. Flowers in every color. Trees reaching toward a sky so blue it hurt. Grass emerald green and soft. The fountain sparkling in sunlight like diamonds. And there, kneeling in the flower beds with dirt on her hands and sunlight in her tangled hair, Peyton. "Peyton," he called. She looked up, and Owen saw her face clearly for the first time. She was small and scrappy, with bright eyes and a smile that could light up the world. She was wearing a too-big dress and no shoes. Her hair was a mess. Her hands were filthy. She was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. "Owen." She stood slowly, hope and fear warring on her face. Are you? "I can see you," he whispered, walking toward her. "Really see you. Your eyes are green, actual green, alive and bright like you said. And your hair is brown with gold in it when the sun hits it. And you're smiling, and it's the most perfect thing in the entire world." Peyton's eyes filled with tears. "You can really see everything. The world is so beautiful, Peyton. So much more than I ever imagined." She ran to him, and he caught her, spinning her around while they both laughed and cried. Diana watched from nearby, her own eyes wet, understanding that her daughter had somehow performed a miracle. When Owen set Peyton down, he knelt so they were eye to eye. "Thank you," he said seriously, "for being brave when I couldn't be, for finding the truth when everyone else wanted to hide it, for teaching me that I was worth fighting for. You gave me back my sight, Peyton, all of it." "You did that yourself," Peyton said. "You were brave enough to stop taking the poison. You were brave enough to confront your dad. I just helped a little. You helped everything." They stood in the garden, two children who'd fought against lies and greed and won. The sun blazed overhead, and Owen tilted his face toward it, finally understanding what warmth and light and color meant. And in that moment, that perfect crystalline moment, Owen Vincent knew that whatever came next, whatever legal battles or public scandals or family fractures waited in the future, he had won the only thing that mattered. He had won his sight. He had won the truth. He had won a friendship that had saved his life. But the fight wasn't over yet, because the truth was out, and the world was about to learn what happened when a millionaire chose reputation over his son's sight. And Harrison Vincent was about to face the consequences he'd spent 10 years running from. The light had broken through the darkness. Now comes the reckoning. The lab results came back on Monday morning. Dr. Sarah Chun called Diana's phone at 8 a.m., her voice tight with professional fury. "Mrs. William, the pill Peyton brought in, tested positive for Neuraxin, a neural suppressant that was banned for pediatric use in 2008 due to severe cognitive and developmental side effects. Whoever prescribed this to a child committed medical malpractice at minimum, criminal endangerment at worst." Diana's face went pale. Peyton stood beside her, listening to the speaker, her small hands clenched into fists. "What do we do?" Diana asked, her voice shaking. "You go to the authorities. I've already filed a mandatory report with Child Protective Services. I'm legally required to when I discover evidence of child abuse. They'll be investigating the Vincent household within 24 hours. Diana's eyes widened in horror. Dr. Chun, we work for the Vincents. If they find out Peyton was involved, then they find out. Mrs. William, a child, was systematically poisoned for a decade. This isn't about employment. This is about justice. After the call ended, Diana sat at their tiny kitchen table with her head in her hands. We're going to lose this job, she whispered. We're going to lose everything. Mama, we had to, Peyton said fiercely. Owen deserves the truth. I know, baby. I know. But truth doesn't pay rent. Within hours, the investigation began. 2 social workers and a detective arrived at the Vincent estate at 10 a.m. They carried warrants for medical records, authorization to interview Owen privately, and the authority to remove him from the home if they deemed it unsafe. Harrison met them at the door, his face carved from stone. I've been expecting you, he said quietly. My attorney is on his way. Mr. Vincent, we have questions about your son's medical treatment, specifically regarding the administration of Naraxin. I'm aware of why you're here. I'll cooperate fully. Owen watched from the second-floor landing as official-looking people swarmed through his home. Mrs. Chun stood beside him, her hand on his shoulder. What's happening? Owen asked, though he already knew. The truth is coming out, sweet boy, and it's going to get uglier before it gets better. She was right. By noon, the story had leaked to the press. By 2 p.m., news vans lined the long driveway of the Vincent estate. By evening, Harrison's face was on every channel. Millionaire philanthropist accused of keeping son blind to cover up medical malpractice. The media frenzy was immediate and brutal. Reporters dug into the Vincent Foundation's finances, Dr. Garrison's history, every medical claim Harrison had ever made. The foundation's board called an emergency meeting. Donors began withdrawing support. The empire Harrison had spent 30 years building was crumbling in real time. And at the center of it all, Owen. The social workers interviewed him for 3 hours that first day. They asked about his medical history, his relationship with his father, whether he felt safe in the home. Owen told them everything. The medications, the sealed files. The moment he discovered his blindness had been maintained rather than treated. Do you want to be removed from your father's custody? The lead social worker asked gently. Owen hesitated. His father had betrayed him in the worst possible way. Had stolen 10 years of sight for the sake of reputation. Had chosen foundation over family. But he was still Owen's father. I don't know. Owen admitted, his voice small. I'm angry at him. So angry. But I don't know if I want to lose him completely. You don't have to decide right now. We're going to continue investigating, and we'll make recommendations based on what we find. In the meantime, you'll remain in the home with increased oversight. That night, Owen sat in his room, seeing it in full color now, though the beauty was tainted by fear, and tried to process the chaos his life had become. He'd wanted the truth exposed. He'd wanted his father to face consequences. But he hadn't understood what that would actually mean. The cameras, the strangers, the whole world picking apart his tragedy like vultures on a carcass. He'd wanted justice. But justice was terrifying. Peyton tried to visit Owen the next day and was turned away at the gate. A security guard she'd never seen before stopped her, his expression apologetic but firm. Sorry, kid. No visitors allowed while the investigation is ongoing. Family only. But I'm Owen's friend. I have my orders. Peyton stared at the massive iron gates, feeling helplessness wash over her. Owen was there, somewhere in that huge mansion, dealing with this nightmare alone. And she couldn't reach him. She pulled out her phone, the cheap one her mother had given her, and texted the number Mrs. Chun had secretly provided. Are you okay? Minutes passed. Then, scared, they won't let me leave the house. Say it's for my protection, but it feels like I'm in prison again. Different kinds of darkness. Peyton's eyes burned. I'm trying to get to you. I won't give up. I know. You never do. That's why you're my best friend. Forever. Forever. But forever felt fragile when iron gates and legal proceedings and media circuses stood between them. On Wednesday, Harrison's attorney held a press conference. The mansion's front steps became a stage. Cameras clicked like locusts. Reporters shouted questions. And Harrison Vincent, perfectly dressed, utterly exhausted, stood at the microphone and read a prepared statement. 10 years ago, my infant son was treated by Dr. Marcus Garrison, a respected pediatric neurologist. Dr. Garrison misdiagnosed Owen's condition and prescribed medication that had devastating, unforeseen consequences. By the time we realized the damage, Dr. Garrison was terminally ill. I made the choice to protect his legacy and the foundation that bore his name, a foundation that had helped thousands of children. That choice was wrong. The crowd erupted. Harrison raised his hand for silence. I prioritized reputation over my son's well-being. I maintained his blindness through continued medication rather than face the legal and financial consequences of malpractice. I robbed Owen of 10 years of sight because I was a coward, and I will spend the rest of my life trying to atone for that betrayal. Mr. Vincent, are you facing criminal charges? The investigation is ongoing. I will cooperate fully with authorities and accept whatever judgment they deem appropriate. What about your son? Will Owen testify against you? Harrison's mask cracked slightly. My son owes me nothing. If he chooses to testify, I won't contest it. He deserves to be heard. Do you expect forgiveness? No, I don't deserve it. The press conference lasted 40 minutes. By the time it ended, Harrison had admitted to everything. The cover-up, the medication, the decade of lies. He stepped down from the foundation's board. He announced the establishment of a victims' fund for anyone harmed by Dr. Garrison's malpractice. He promised full transparency, but nothing he said could undo the damage. Owen watched the press conference on the television in his room, seeing his father's face twisted with guilt and grief, and felt nothing but emptiness. This was what truth looked like. Messy, public, destructive. He'd wanted it, but he hadn't known it would hurt this much. On Thursday, Diana was fired. Mr. Castellano delivered the news with tears in his eyes. I'm so sorry, Diana. The estate manager says they're downsizing all non-essential staff during the investigation. You're being let go effective immediately. It's because of Peyton, isn't it? Diana's voice was hollow, because she found the files. Mr. Castellano couldn't see her eyes. I don't know. Maybe. I'm sorry. They had 72 hours to vacate the garage apartment. Diana sat on the narrow bed she shared with her daughter and felt the familiar weight of despair. No job, no home. Back to the shelter, if they were lucky. Back to uncertainty and fear and scrambling for survival. Peyton found her mother crying and climbed into her lap, even though she was getting too big for it. I'm sorry, Mama, she whispered. This is my fault. No, baby. You did the right thing. Diana's voice broke. We just have to figure out what comes next. Can I say goodbye to Owen? Before we leave. The guards won't let you near the house. Then I'll sneak in, like I did before. Diana pulled back, looking at her daughter's fierce, determined face. Peyton, you can't. The estate is crawling with investigators and media. If you're caught, I have to, Mama. I have to tell them we're leaving. I can't just disappear. Diana wanted to say no, wanted to keep her daughter safe and invisible and far from the chaos consuming the Vincent family. But she saw the love in Peyton's eyes, the pure, uncomplicated love of a child who'd found a friend worth fighting for. Be careful, she whispered. Please, baby, be so careful. Peyton waited until midnight. The media vans had thinned out, most reporters packing up after dark, planning to return in the morning. The security guard at the gate was new, unfamiliar with the grounds. And Peyton knew every shadow, every hidden path, every gap in the estate's defenses. She slipped through the hedge line on the eastern border, crawled under the security fence where erosion had created a gap, and made her way through the dark gardens toward the mansion. Lights blazed in some windows, investigators working late, probably. But Owen's window, second floor west side, was dark except for the faint glow of a television. Peyton found the trellis that climbed the side of the building, old wooden iron, covered with climbing roses. She tested the first rung. It was held. She climbed. The roses tore at her clothes and scratched her arms, but she kept going, up and up, until she reached Owen's window. She tapped softly on the glass. Inside, Owen was lying on his bed, staring at the ceiling with seeing eyes that held no joy. At the sound, he jerked upright. Peyton waved from outside the window. His eyes widened in shock and relief. He rushed over and yanked the window open. Are you insane? He hissed, even as he was pulling her inside. There are investigators everywhere. If you're caught, I had to see you. Peyton dusted rose petals from her hair. We're leaving. My mama got fired. We have to be out by Saturday. The color drained from Owen's face. No, no, they can't. Where will you go? Probably back to the shelter. Maybe Mama can find work in another town. Peyton tried to sound brave, but her voice shook. I just wanted to say goodbye. And to tell you, I'm glad you can see now. Even if everything else is terrible, at least you got that back. I don't care about seeing if you're not here. Owen grabbed her hands desperately. Peyton, you're the only good thing in this nightmare. You're the only person who sees me instead of a tragedy or a scandal or a victim. You can't leave. I don't have a choice. Yes, you do. Stay here. You and your mom. There are dozens of rooms. Owen, my mama was fired. She can't stay in a place where she doesn't work. Then I'll hire her myself. Owen stopped, frustration and helplessness washing over him. I'll figure something out. Please, don't disappear. Peyton felt tears slip down her cheeks. I don't want to, but I don't know how to stop it. They stood in Owen's room, holding hands while the world crumbled around them. Outside, a car pulled up. More investigators, probably. Voices echoed from downstairs. You should go, Owen whispered. Before someone finds you here, I'll try to text you. Once we're settled somewhere. Promise. I promise. Owen pulled her into a fierce hug. Thank you. For everything. For being brave enough to find the truth. For teaching me that I was worth saving. For being my first and best friend. Always, Peyton whispered against his shoulder. She climbed back out the window, down the treacherous trellis, and disappeared into the shadows of the garden. Owen watched from his window until he couldn't see her anymore. Then he turned to his room, his beautiful, visible, color-filled room, and felt more alone than he'd ever felt in 10 years of blindness. Because darkness was easier to bear when you had light to hold on to. And his light was being taken away. Friday morning brought the worst news yet. The district attorney announced formal charges: medical fraud, child endangerment, conspiracy to commit malpractice cover-up. Harrison Vincent was formally arrested at 7 a.m. Owen watched from his window as his father was led to a police car in handcuffs. Cameras flashed. Reporters screamed questions. Harrison kept his head down, his face carefully blank. Mrs. Chun stood beside Owen, her arm around his shoulders. What happens now? Owen asked, his voice very small. Your father will post bail and be released pending trial. But Owen, the social workers are recommending temporary foster placement while the case proceeds. Owen's head snapped toward her. What? No, I don't want to go to a foster home. I know, sweet boy. I know. Your father's attorney is fighting it, but with the criminal charges. She trailed off, helpless. I'm being punished for telling the truth, Owen whispered. He took my sight, and now the truth is taking my home. You're not being punished. The system is trying to protect you. I don't want protection. I want my friend. I want Peyton. And they fired her mother and kicked him out, and now I'm going to be sent away, and I'll never see her again, and his voice broke completely. Mrs. Chun held him while he sobbed, and wondered how justice could feel so much like cruelty. By Friday evening, the mansion was nearly empty. Most of the staff had been let go, or had quit rather than be associated with the scandal. The investigators had taken boxes of files. Harrison was out on bail, but staying at his attorney's house to avoid the media circus. Owen sat alone in the vast, echoing house with only Mrs. Chun for company. His phone buzzed. A text from Peyton. At the shelter. It's crowded and loud, but we have a bed. Mama's looking for work. Miss you. Owen typed back with shaking hands. They're trying to put me in foster care. I might not have my phone for much longer. I'm scared. Me too. I wish I'd never asked you to find the truth. Everything's worse now. There was a long pause. Then, no, everything's honest now. Worse and honest is better than better and lies. You're free, Owen. Even if it's scary, you're free. Owen stared at the words, feeling something shift in his chest. She was right. He was free. He could see. He knew the truth. The darkness was gone. But freedom was terrifying and lonely and nothing like he'd imagined. What if we never see each other again? We will. I don't know how, but we will. Some friendships are too strong to break, even when the whole world tries. Promise? Promise. But promises felt fragile when the system was determined to separate them, when scandal had destroyed everything around them, when justice meant losing each other. Saturday morning, the social workers returned. They brought a foster care placement counselor and a gentle woman who introduced herself as Owen's temporary guardian. Owen, we found a placement for you with a family experienced in caring for children with medical trauma. You'll stay with them while your father's case proceeds through the courts. It's temporary. How temporary? Owen's voice was flat. That depends on the trial outcome and the custody evaluation. Could be weeks. Could be months. What about my things? My books, You can bring personal items. We'll help you pack. Owen looked around his room. The room he could finally see in all its details. The books he'd read in Braille. The window where he'd spent years tracing patterns on glass. The trellis where Peyton had climbed to say goodbye. Can I make one phone call first? He asked quietly. Of course. Owen called Peyton's cheap phone. She answered on the first ring. Owen, they're taking me to foster care today. Right now. He heard her sharp intake of breath. Where? I don't know. They won't tell me until we get there. Something about privacy and media attention. Owen, I need you to know something. Before I go. His voice shook. You saved my life. Not just my sight, my whole life. You taught me that I was worth more than my blindness, worth more than my father's guilt, worth more than being a tragedy. You taught me to be brave. Peyton was crying. He could hear in her breathing. You taught me that fighting for people matters. That truth is worth the cost. That friendship is stronger than money or power or anything. I'll find you again, Owen said fiercely. I don't know how or when, but I will. This isn't the end of our story. It better not be, because you still owe me a turn climbing the oak tree, and I don't forget debts. Owen laughed through his tears. Deal. Owen, the social worker said gently. We need to go. I have to leave. Owen whispered into the phone. I know. Be brave. And Owen, look at everything. See the whole world for both of us. Okay. Goodbye, Peyton. Not goodbye. See you later. The call ended. Owen packed a small bag with shaking hands, clothes, a few books, the cracked yellow bucket Peyton had left behind the last time they played in the garden. It was battered and worthless, but it was hers, and he held on to it like a lifeline. Mrs. Chin hugged him at the door. This isn't forever, sweet boy. Remember that. Feels like forever, Owen whispered. He climbed into the social worker's car and watched through the rear window as the Vincent mansion, his prison, his home, the site of his greatest suffering and his greatest friendship, disappeared behind trees. The world he could finally see was beautiful beyond imagination. Colors and shapes and details that took his breath away. But none of it mattered without Peyton. That night, in a crowded foster home 40 miles from the Vincent estate, Owen lay in an unfamiliar bed surrounded by unfamiliar sounds. The foster family was kind. The room was clean. The other children were polite. But it wasn't home. And Peyton wasn't there. He pulled out his phone. They'd let him keep it, though all his contacts except Mrs. Chun and his father had been blocked for safety reasons. He couldn't call Peyton, couldn't text her, couldn't reach the one person who made him feel real. For the first time since his vision had returned, Owen closed his eyes and wished for darkness. Because at least in the darkness, he'd had hope that light was coming. At least in blindness, he'd had Peyton's voice describing beauty he couldn't see. Now he could see everything except the one thing that mattered. And the world had never looked more empty. In the homeless shelter across town, Peyton lay on a narrow cot next to her sleeping mother and stared at the ceiling. They'd done the right thing. She knew that. Owen could see. The truth was exposed. Justice was happening. But justice had cost them everything. Her mother's job. Their home. Owen's freedom. Their friendship. Was the truth worth this price? Was being right worth being alone? Peyton didn't know anymore. She clutched her phone, even though Owen couldn't call or text. Just knowing it was there. Knowing that somewhere out there, he was holding on to her cracked yellow bucket the same way, made the loneliness slightly more bearable. I miss you, she whispered to the dark shelter ceiling. I miss you and I'm scared and I don't know how to fix this. The darkness didn't answer. It never did. But somewhere, 40 miles away, Owen whispered the same words to his own dark ceiling. And the universe held their pain like a promise. This isn't the end. Darkness comes before dawn. Separation comes before reunion. This is the breaking point. But breaking points are where transformation begins. They just had to survive long enough to see it. They'd fought for truth and won. And the victory was destroying them. 2 children, separated by systems and scandals and the weight of adult sins. One who could finally see, but had lost his light. One who'd been brave enough to fight, but was losing everything. This was the darkest hour, when justice felt like punishment, when truth felt like tragedy, when the right choice felt like the wrong outcome. But dawn was coming. Even in the deepest darkness, dawn was always coming. How are you holding up? This part is heavy, I know. Drop a comment and tell me if you're still believing in Owen and Peyton. Because what comes next is going to prove that some lights can never be extinguished, no matter how dark things get. Tell me in the comments, how are you feeling right now? What do you think should happen to Harrison? This story is getting real. I need to hear your thoughts. 3 weeks passed. 3 weeks of Owen living with the Patterson family. Kind people with gentle voices who didn't understand that kindness couldn't fill the Peyton-shaped hole in his life. 3 weeks of mandatory therapy sessions where he talked about his father's betrayal to strangers with clipboards. 3 weeks of seeing the world in brilliant color while feeling gray inside. 3 weeks of silence from the one person who mattered. The Pattersons had 2 other foster children. Maya, 16, who'd been in the system for 4 years and had eyes that had seen too much, and James, 6, who still believed someone would come take him home. Owen existed between them, not quite hardened, not quite hopeful. On the 22nd day, Mrs. Patterson drove Owen to his weekly supervised visit with Harrison. They met in a neutral location, a family counseling center with beige walls and uncomfortable chairs. A social worker sat in the corner, taking notes, making sure nothing inappropriate happened. Harrison looked like he'd aged a decade. His suit was still expensive, but it hung differently on him now. His eyes held a haunted quality that Owen recognized from mirrors. "Owen," Harrison said quietly, "you look well. I can see. So I look like everything, I guess." Owen's voice was flat. They sat across from each other at a small table. The social worker's pen scratched against paper. "How is the foster home?" Harrison asked, grasping for neutral topics. "Fine. They're nice. It's not home, but it's fine. I'm glad you're being cared for." Silence stretched between them like broken glass. "Owen, I need you to know. The trial is proceeding. My attorney says it could go to sentencing within 2 months. I'm likely facing jail time." Owen said nothing. "And I deserve it. I know that. I robbed you of 10 years. I prioritized everything except what mattered." Harrison's voice cracked. "But I need you to understand something. When I look back at those 10 years, do you know what I see? Your own guilt." Owen's voice was bitter. "I see all the moments I missed. All the times I could have just sat with you, talked with you, been your father instead of your medical manager. I see every dinner where we sat in silence, because I didn't know how to connect with you beyond treatment plans. I see a decade of missed chances to love you properly." Owen's throat tightened despite his anger. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I want you to have something I never had. The ability to learn from mistakes before it's too late." "Owen, you're angry at me. You have every right to be. But don't let that anger make you miss what's right in front of you." "What's right in front of me?" "Foster care, therapy sessions, a father going to prison." "No." Harrison leaned forward. "That girl, Peyton, she fought for you when no one else would. She saw you when I couldn't. She gave you back your sight, not medically, but in every way that mattered. Don't lose her because the system separated you. Fight for her the way she fought for you." Owen stared at his father, really seeing him for the first time since the arrest. Seeing not just the man who'd betrayed him, but the broken father who'd finally, painfully learned what mattered. "I can't contact her," Owen said, his voice rough. "They blocked her number, said it was protective measures while the investigation continues. Then find another way. You have sight now, Owen. Use it. You have a voice. Use it. You have a truth that changed everything. Use it." For the first time in 3 weeks, Owen felt something other than numbness. A spark. Small, fragile, but real. "Ow," he whispered. Harrison pulled out his phone. He was allowed to keep it despite the charges, and slid it across the table. "Mrs. Chun has been in contact with Peyton's mother. Diana is working 2 jobs now, trying to save enough for an apartment. They're still at the shelter, but Peyton goes to the public library every day after school to do homework. She's there until 6 p.m. Owen grabbed the phone, looking at the address Harrison had pulled up. Midtown Public Library, 4 miles from the foster home. "I can't just leave the Pattersons' house," Owen said. "There are rules." There are always rules. The question is whether you're brave enough to break the ones that are unjust. Harrison's eyes met his son's. That girl taught you that, didn't she? That some rules are worth breaking for the right reasons. Owen looked at his father and saw, for the first time, a glimpse of who Harrison might have been if fear hadn't ruled him. Who he might still become if redemption was possible. If I do this, Owen said slowly, if I find her, will you help? However I can. Then I need you to do something for me. Something big. Anything. Owen leaned forward and told his father exactly what he needed. Harrison listened, and with each word, something like hope flickered in his eyes. On Tuesday afternoon, Peyton sat in the Midtown Public Library's children's section, trying to focus on her math homework. She'd been coming here every day for 3 weeks, partly because the shelter was too loud for studying, partly because the library had internet access she could use to look up job postings for her mother, and partly because keeping busy meant less time to think about Owen, less time to wonder if he was okay, if he was scared, if he hated her for starting the chain of events that had torn his life apart. She tried to text him a dozen times before remembering his number was blocked. She'd walked past the Vincent estate twice, staring at the iron gates that might as well have been a prison wall. Some victories felt like losses. Peyton William? She looked up from her math worksheet. A librarian stood there, middle-aged with kind eyes, holding a piece of paper. Someone left this for you at the desk. Said it was important. Peyton took the paper with trembling hands. It was a note, written in handwriting she didn't recognize. Meet me in the third-floor stacks. Biography section. I've been looking for you everywhere. Oh. Her heart stopped. Then I started again, racing. Oh, Owen. Peyton abandoned her homework and ran. She took the stairs 2 at a time, her worn shoes slapping against the linoleum. Third floor. Biography section. She rounded the corner into the quiet stacks. And there, Owen stood between shelves of books, wearing jeans and a t-shirt she'd never seen him in. His dark hair was messier than it had been at the mansion. His eyes, his beautiful, seeing eyes, were red-rimmed like he'd been crying. But he was smiling. Peyton, he breathed. She crashed into him with enough force to make him stumble backward. He caught her, holding on like she was the only solid thing in a tilting world. You found me. Peyton sobbed into his shoulder. How did you find me? My dad told me you came here. And I broke about 15 foster care rules to get here, but I didn't care. I had to see you. They pulled apart enough to look at each other. Owen's hands came up to frame her face, his seeing eyes taking in every detail like he was memorizing her. You're even more beautiful than I remembered, he whispered. Your eyes have little gold flecks in them. I can see them now. And you have a freckle right here. He touched her cheek gently. That I never knew about. Peyton laughed through her tears. You're taller than I thought. And your eyes are actually brown with amber in them, not just plain brown. And you have a scar on your eyebrow. From a surgery when I was 3. They stood in the biography section, 2 children cataloging each other's details, making up for 3 weeks of silence with visual information and desperate touch. I missed you, Owen said. Every single day. Every moment. The world is so beautiful now, Peyton, but it felt empty without you in it. I thought I'd never see you again. I thought the system would keep us separated forever. No. Owen's voice went fierce. I won't let that happen. I have a plan. Well, my dad and I have a plan. He's helping me. Actually helping me. For the first time maybe ever. Your dad. Peyton's eyes widened. Owen, I thought you hated him. I did. Maybe I still do a little. But he said something that made sense. He said not to miss what's right in front of me because I'm angry about the past. And you're right in front of me. You're what matters. He took her hands, squeezing tight. Peyton, my dad is making a deal with the prosecutors. He's agreeing to plead guilty to all charges in exchange for a reduced sentence and mandatory community service. Part of the deal is establishing a foundation, a real one, not the corrupt one that covered up malpractice. A foundation that helps children who've been hurt by medical negligence. Peyton's breath caught. Owen. And he's funding it with his personal fortune. Everything. The mansion, the cars, the investments. All of it goes to making this right. And part of making it right is making sure you and your mom are taken care of. We don't want charity. It's not charity. It's justice. Owen's eyes blazed. You saved my life, Peyton. You uncovered a conspiracy. You fought when everyone told you to stay quiet. My dad wants to offer your mom a job. A real job, not gardening. Diana would help run the foundation, coordinate services for families affected by malpractice. She'd have a salary, benefits, housing. Peyton felt dizzy. That's too much. It's not enough. It'll never be enough to repay what you did. But it's a start. Owen pulled her closer. And there's more. I told the social workers I want to come home. Not to the mansion. That's being sold. But home with my dad. They're considering it because he's cooperating fully with his sentence. We live in a smaller place, something manageable. And I asked if you and your mom could live nearby. Close enough that we could see each other every day. Tears streamed down Peyton's face. You did that. For me. For us. Because you were right. Some friendships are too strong to break. And I'm not losing you again. I don't care what rules I have to break or what systems I have to fight. You're my family, Peyton. You and your mom. More than blood or money or anything. Peyton threw her arms around him again, and they held each other in the quiet library stacks while the world realigned itself into something that made sense. So what happens now? Peyton asked when she could speak again. Now we fight. Together. My dad's attorney is filing motions to modify the custody arrangement. Your mom needs to agree to the foundation job. Mrs. Chun is supposed to talk to her tonight. And we need to show the social workers that we're not just some random friendship, but something real and important and worth protecting. How do we do that? Owen pulled back, grinning, a real grin, full of mischief and hope. We make noise. Loud noise. The kind the media can't ignore. The plan came together in 48 hours. Mrs. Chun contacted Diana and explained the foundation offer. Diana was skeptical, terrified of being hurt again, of trusting the Vincent family after being fired. But Mrs. Chun was persuasive. This isn't Harrison trying to buy silence or erase guilt, she explained. This is him finally doing something right. And Diana, your daughter saved a child's life. She deserves to see the fruit of that bravery. Please, let him help. Diana agreed to meet with Harrison's attorney. The offer was legitimate, better than legitimate. A real salary doing meaningful work. An apartment in a safe neighborhood. Security for her and Peyton. What? Diana asked, her voice shaking. Why would he do this after we destroyed his foundation? The attorney smiled gently. Because you didn't destroy it. You exposed the rot so something real could grow. And because Owen asked his father to be the man he should have been all along. Harrison is trying. It may be too late for some things, but not for this. Diana took the job. Meanwhile, Owen worked on phase 2 of the plan, going public. He contacted a journalist who'd been covering the case, a woman named Rebecca Lawson who'd written fair, balanced pieces instead of sensationalized garbage. He offered her an exclusive interview. I'll tell you everything, Owen said over the phone from the Pattersons' house, breaking another rule by using a cell phone without supervision. About the blindness, the cover-up, all of it. But I want to talk about something else too. About the girl who saved me when everyone else had given up. Rebecca agreed immediately. The interview aired on Thursday evening, prime time, on a major network. Owen sat in a studio, looking directly into the camera with eyes that could finally see, and told his story. All of it. The decade of darkness. The medication that stole his sight. His father's betrayal. The moment a barefoot girl with a cracked bucket taught him that he was worth more than his blindness. Everyone talks about my father's crimes, Owen said, his voice steady and strong. And they should. He did terrible things. But I want to talk about Peyton William. She's 8 years old. She has nothing. Her family lost everything when her father died. They were homeless when her mother got a job at our estate. Rebecca leaned forward. And she's the one who discovered the truth. She's the one who saw me. Not my blindness. Not my father's money. Not the tragedy. Just me. Just Owen. And she decided I was worth fighting for. His voice thickened with emotion. She broke rules and risked everything to find medical files that proved I'd been poisoned. She gave me back my sight. Not because she's a doctor or a specialist, but because she cared enough to look for the truth when everyone else wanted to hide it. Where's Peyton now? In a homeless shelter with her mother. Because when the truth came out, my father's estate fired her mom. Peyton saved my life and lost her home in the process. Owen looked directly into the camera. That's not justice. That's cruelty. And I'm asking, no, I'm demanding, that we do better. What would better look like? It would look like protecting the people who speak the truth, like rewarding courage instead of punishing it, like making sure that when a child is brave enough to fight for what's right, they don't end up homeless and separated from the friend they saved. The interview went viral. By Friday morning, #Justice for Peyton was trending. By afternoon, news outlets across the country were running the story. By evening, the district attorney's office was flooded with calls demanding that Peyton and Diana be recognized, protected, and compensated. The social workers handling Owen's case called an emergency meeting. On Saturday morning, Owen sat in a conference room with Harrison's attorney, the social workers, and a family court judge who'd been assigned to review the custody arrangement. The lead social worker, Ms. Martinez, looked tired but not unkind. "Owen, your interview has been created. Significant public interest in this case. The DA's office has been in contact. They're recommending modifications to the custody arrangement in light of your father's cooperation and guilty plea." Owen's heart hammered. "What kind of modifications?" "Supervised home placement with your father, pending his sentencing. You'd live together under social services oversight until the court determines long-term custody. And Peyton? Her family." Ms. Martinez glanced at the judge, who nodded permission to speak. "Mrs. William has accepted employment with the new foundation your father is establishing. She and her daughter will be moving into subsidized housing, separate from your residence, but in the same neighborhood. You'll be able to see Peyton regularly, under appropriate supervision." Owen felt tears prick his eyes. Really? But Owen, there are conditions. You and your father will attend family therapy. You'll continue individual counseling, and you'll comply with all social services requirements. Any violation could result in immediate removal. Do you understand?" Yes, I understand. I'll do anything." Harrison reached across the table and took his son's hand, the first time he'd initiated touch in years. His voice was rough with emotion. "Thank you. Thank you for giving us a chance to do this right." The judge spoke for the first time, her voice stern but not unkind. "Mr. Vincent, you committed serious crimes against your son. This arrangement is not forgiveness. It's an opportunity to begin making amends. Don't waste it." "I won't, Your Honor. I swear I won't." 2 weeks later, Owen stood in front of a small 2-story house in a quiet neighborhood. It wasn't a mansion. It had 4 bedrooms instead of 20. The yard was modest. The furniture was simple. There was no medical wing, no staff, no marble fountains. It was perfect. Harrison stood beside him, holding 2 suitcases containing everything they'd kept from the old life. "Ready?" Harrison asked quietly. "Yeah, I'm ready." They walked inside together, father and son, broken and healing, learning to be a family instead of a tragedy. Mrs. Chun was already there, having agreed to live with them and help manage the household. She prepared dinner, nothing fancy, just soup and bread, and the smell filled the small house with warmth. "Welcome home, sweet boy," she said, hugging Owen tight. "It's good to be home," Owen whispered. That evening, after dinner, there was a knock at the door. Owen opened it and found Peyton standing on the porch, her mother behind her. Both of them were smiling. Peyton wore a new dress, still simple, but it fit properly. Her hair was brushed and shining. Her feet had shoes, but her eyes held the same fierce brightness they'd always had. "Hi," she said, suddenly shy. "Hi," Owen breathed. They stood there, grinning at each other like idiots, until Diana laughed. "Can we come in? Or are you two just going to stare at each other on the porch all night?" Inside, the adults talked about foundation business and housing arrangements and therapy schedules. But Owen and Peyton slipped away to the small backyard, where a single tree grew in the corner. "It's not as big as the oak at the estate," Owen said, "but I thought maybe we could climb it anyway." Peyton's face lit up. "Race you to the top." They climbed together, laughing and grabbing branches and moving higher into the leaves. And when they reached a study branch big enough for both of them, they sat side by side and looked at the world. The sun was setting, painting the sky in colors Owen could finally see and appreciate. Orange like happiness, pink like hope, purple like mystery and magic. "Peyton," Owen said softly, "thank you. For everything. For fighting when I couldn't. For believing I was worth saving. For being my light when everything was dark." Peyton took his hand, squeezing tight. "You were always worth it, Owen. You just needed someone to show you. I love you," Owen said. Not romantically. They were too young for that. But with the fierce, pure love of someone who'd been saved and wanted the Savior to know it mattered. "I love you too," Peyton said. "Forever friends." "Forever friends," Owen agreed. They sat in the tree as the sun set and the stars began to emerge. The stars Owen could finally see, scattered like diamonds across the darkening sky. And for the first time in his life, Owen felt completely, wholly at peace. He had his sight. He had the truth. He had a father who was learning to love properly. He had a home that was real instead of perfect. And most importantly, he had Peyton. In the small house below, Harrison and Diana sat at the kitchen table while Mrs. Chun made tea. "Thank you," Diana said quietly, "for the job, for housing, for helping my daughter stay close to Owen." "I should be thanking you," Harrison said. "Your daughter gave me my son back. Not just his sight, him, the real Owen, not the shell I created. She did in days what I couldn't do in 10 years. She's special," Diana agreed. "Stubborn as a mule, but special." Harrison smiled. A real smile, small but genuine. They're good for each other. Owen was dying in that mansion, even before the blindness. The loneliness was killing him. Now look at him. They all turned to the window, watching the two children in the tree, silhouetted against the sunset, laughing at something only they understood. "Now he's alive," Mrs. Chin finished softly. "Finally, truly alive." Harrison nodded, feeling something he hadn't felt in a decade. Hope. Not the desperate, grasping hope of finding a cure. Not the fearful hope of avoiding scandal. But real, solid hope that maybe, he could become the father Owen deserved. It was too late to erase the past. The trial was still coming. Prison time loomed. His reputation was destroyed. But his son was laughing in a tree with his best friend, seeing the sunset with eyes that finally worked, living a childhood that was real instead of clinical. Some things couldn't be undone, but some things could be rebuilt. And Harrison was finally ready to do the hard, painful work of reconstruction. The turning point had come, not with a dramatic rescue or a sudden miracle, but with quiet choices and brave hearts. With a father finally choosing his son over his pride. With a girl refusing to let injustice win. With a boy finding his voice and using it to demand better. The darkness was receding. The light was growing stronger. And the final chapters of this story were about to prove that some victories are worth every battle, every loss, every moment of fear. Because truth, love, and courage will always win in the end. We're almost there. Tell me in the comments. Are you crying happy tears yet? Because I am. Let me know what moment hit you hardest. The months that followed were a study in transformation. Harrison's trial began in late autumn. Leaves falling outside the courthouse windows like the remnants of his old life. The proceedings were swift. He pled guilty to all charges, so there was no drawn-out battle, just the grim formality of justice being served. Owen attended every day, sitting in the gallery with Mrs. Chun on one side and Peyton on the other. He watched his father take the stand and confess everything. Watched him answer prosecutors' questions with unflinching honesty. I watched him accept responsibility without excuse or deflection. "I prioritize reputation over my son's well-being," Harrison said, his voice steady despite the weight of his words. "I allowed Owen to suffer unnecessarily for 10 years because I was too proud and too afraid to face the truth. I betrayed the trust of a child who deserved better, and I will spend the rest of my life trying to make amends for that betrayal." The judge, a stern woman in her 60s with eyes that missed nothing, listened to testimony for 3 days. Medical experts explained Nuraxon's effects. Dr. Morrison admitted his complicity in maintaining the deception. Social workers described the damage done to Owen's development and trust. And then, on the 4th day, the judge called Owen to the stand. He walked to the witness box with Peyton squeezing his hand for courage until the last possible moment. Then he sat, placed his hand on the Bible, and swore to tell the truth. The prosecutor was gentle with him. "Owen, can you describe your relationship with your father now, after learning about the medication?" Owen took a breath, looking directly at Harrison. His father met his eyes, something he'd been too ashamed to do for weeks. "It's complicated," Owen said honestly. "I'm still angry. Some days I'm furious. But I'm also starting to understand that people make terrible choices for complicated reasons. My dad was wrong, Completely, inexcusably wrong. But he's also trying to do better now. Do you feel safe with him? Yes. Because the cover-up is over. The secrets are exposed. He can't hide behind lies anymore, which means he has to face who he really is. And who he really is, under all the fear and pride, is someone who loves me. He just forgot how to show it properly. What do you want to see happen to your father? Owen was quiet for a long moment. The courtroom held its breath. I want him to face consequences. Real ones. Because what he did was wrong, and wrong actions need to have weight. But I also want him to have a chance to rebuild. To do the work he should have been doing all along. To help other kids who've been hurt by medical negligence. Owen's voice strengthened. I want justice. But I also want redemption to be possible. Because if it's not possible for him, then it's not possible for anyone. And I need to believe people can change. The courtroom was silent. Several jurors wiped their eyes. The judge's stern expression softened slightly. When the prosecutor finished, the defense had no questions. Owen stepped down and returned to his seat between Mrs. Chun and Peyton. You did so good, Peyton whispered, taking his hand again. I meant every word, Owen whispered back. The sentencing came a week later. The judge reviewed all testimony, all evidence, all character statements. Then she spoke, her voice ringing through the courtroom. Mr. Vincent, you committed grievous harm against your own child. You prioritized institutional reputation over human dignity. You allowed a child to suffer in darkness for a decade to avoid scandal and liability. These are serious crimes that warrant serious consequences. Harrison stood, his back straight, accepting the judgment. However, the judge continued, I also note your complete cooperation with authorities, your full admission of guilt, your establishment of a foundation to help victims of similar negligence, and most significantly, the testimony of your son. Owen Vincent has shown remarkable maturity and grace in advocating for both justice and redemption. I am inclined to honor his wishes. She paused, her eyes moving between Harrison and Owen. I hereby sentence you to 5 years in prison, with 3 years suspended pending successful completion of probation and community service. You will serve 2 years in a minimum security facility, with eligibility for work release to continue operating the foundation. Upon release, you will complete 2,000 hours of community service working directly with families affected by medical malpractice. Additionally, you will maintain supervised custody of Owen, with ongoing family therapy and social services oversight. Do you understand this sentence? Harrison's voice was thick with emotion. Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. Don't thank me, Mr. Vincent. Thank your son. He's the one who chose mercy when he had every right to demand vengeance. Prove yourself worthy of that mercy. I will, Your Honor. Every day for the rest of my life. Owen felt tears streaming down his face, not from sadness, but from release. It was over. The trial, the uncertainty, the waiting. His father would face consequences, but not be destroyed. Justice had been served, but redemption remained possible. Peyton squeezed his hand so hard it hurt, but Owen didn't mind. He squeezed back just as tightly. 2 months later, in the depths of winter, something miraculous happened. Owen woke on a Saturday morning to sunlight streaming through his bedroom window. He opened his eyes, and the world was different. Not blurry, not vague, not approximated. Sharp. Every detail in crystal clarity. The grain in the wooden nightstand. The individual threads in his comforter. The dust motes dancing in the sunbeam like tiny galaxies. Owen sat up, gasping. His vision had been improving steadily since he'd stopped the Neuraxin. But this was perfect. This was what everyone else had been seeing all along. He scrambled out of bed and ran to the mirror. His reflection stared back. Not fuzzy, not approximate, but real. He could see every detail. The exact shade of his eyes, deep brown with flecks of amber that caught the light. The slight wave in his dark hair. The faint scar on his eyebrow. Every pore, every eyelash, every subtle variation in skin tone. Mrs. Chun, he yelled, running down the stairs. Mrs. Chun, I can see. I can really, perfectly see. She emerged from the kitchen, and Owen stopped dead. He could see the exact pattern on her cardigan. Tiny flowers, purple and white. The silver threading through her dark hair. The laugh lines around her eyes and mouth. The precise shade of her lipstick, coral, warm and bright. Sweet boy, she breathed, seeing the wonder on his face. Your vision, is it fully restored? Everything. I can see everything. Every detail, every color, every tiny perfect thing. He laughed, spinning in a circle, taking in the living room. The couch is blue. Not just blue, but like 6 different shades of blue in the fabric pattern. And the painting on the wall has brush strokes I can see individually. And the wood floor has these little whirls and knots and... He stopped, looking at Mrs. Chun with tears streaming down his face. I can see the whole world, he whispered. Every beautiful, perfect, overwhelming piece of it. Mrs. Chun pulled him into a hug, both of them crying. This is what we prayed for. This is a miracle. I have to tell Peyton. Right now. Can I go to her apartment? Go. Run. Tell her everything. Owen grabbed his coat and ran. Peyton's apartment was 6 blocks away, close enough that Owen had memorized the route, far enough that it felt like an adventure. He ran through the winter morning, seeing everything with new eyes. The frost on grass glittering like diamonds. The red of a cardinal against white snow. The blue sky, impossibly, perfectly blue, just like Peyton had described. The bare tree branches create intricate patterns against the clouds. Every color, every texture, every subtle variation hit him like a symphony. He pounded on Peyton's door, breathless and grinning. Diana answered, her eyes widening. Owen, what's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Everything's perfect. Is Peyton here? In her room, but Owen was already past her, bursting into Peyton's small bedroom, where she was sitting on her bed reading a book. She looked up, startled. Owen, what? Look at me, he said, dropping to his knees beside her bed. Really look at my eyes. What do you see? Peyton studied his face carefully. Your eyes are. They're focused. Really focused. Not just mostly focused, but perfect. Owen finished. I can see perfectly, Peyton. Every detail. Full 20/20 vision. The doctor said it might never be complete, but it is. My eyes are completely healed. Peyton's book fell from her hands. Owen, that's a miracle. I know. He grabbed her hands, pulling her off the bed. Come with me. I need to see everything with you. I need you to show me all the things you described when I was blind, so I can see if your words matched reality. Now. Right now. Please. This is the most important thing. Peyton looked at her mother, who was standing in the doorway with tears in her eyes. Go, Diana said softly. Show in the world. They bundled up in coats and scarves and ran outside like the children they were. Children who'd been forced to grow up too fast, but were finally getting the chance to just be kids. Peyton took Owen's hand and led him on a tour of ordinary miracles. Okay, that tree, she said, pointing to an oak in the neighborhood park. When you're blind, I told you the bark was rough like dragon scales. What do you see? Owen approached the tree, running his hands over the bark while his eyes cataloged every detail. It's gray-brown, but not just one color. There are patches of almost silver and darker brown, almost black. And the texture, you were right, it is like dragon scales, overlapping and ancient and strong. And that, Peyton pointed to a neighbor's garden, dormant for winter, but still containing evidence of past blooms. Owen knelt beside the frozen flower bed. The dirt is dark brown, rich, like chocolate. And there are leaves, dead ones, in colors I don't have words for. Orange-brown, yellow-brown, red-brown. And ice crystals on everything that sparkle like tiny diamonds. What about the sky? Owen tilted his face upward, and his breath caught. The winter sky was blue so pure and perfect it made his chest ache. Clouds drifted across it, white-gray, and shades between that he'd never imagined. The sun was a blazing point of light that he could only glance at before it hurt, but its glow touched everything. You said blue feels cool like water, Owen whispered. But it's more than that. Blue is infinite. Blue is freedom. Blue is the biggest feeling I've ever had. Peyton stood beside him, looking up at the sky she'd seen 1,000 times, trying to imagine experiencing it for the first time. What else? She asked softly. What do you want to see? Owen looked at her. Really, truly looked. In the mansion, in the library, even in his new house, he'd been able to see her. But always slightly blurred, always approximated. Now, for the first time, he could see every detail. Her eyes weren't just green. They were green like new grass, like life itself, with little flecks of gold near the pupils. Her hair wasn't just brown, it was dozens of shades from honey to chocolate, and when the winter sun hit it, it glowed like autumn leaves. Her face had freckles scattered across her nose that he'd never noticed. Her smile was slightly crooked, one side going higher than the other. She was beautiful, not in a perfect, magazine way, but in a real, human, completely Peyton way. "You," Owen said. "I want to see you. I've been looking at you for months, but I've never really seen you until right now." Peyton blushed, ducking her head. "I'm nothing special. You're everything special. You're the first thing I wanted to see when the darkness lifted. You're the reason I have sight at all, and you're the most beautiful thing in the entire world." "Owen, I mean it. Not because you're perfect, but because you're real. Because every time I look at you, I see the person who saved me, who fought for me, who taught me I was worth something." His voice cracked. "You're what light looks like, Peyton. You always have been." Peyton threw her arms around him, and they stood in the winter park, two children who'd been through darkness and emerged into light, holding each other while the world blazed around them in perfect, overwhelming color. "I'm so happy for you," Peyton whispered. So happy. It wouldn't mean anything without you here to share it with." They pulled apart, both wiping their eyes, both grinning through tears. "So what now?" Peyton asked. "Now that you can see everything." Owen thought for a moment. Then his face brightened. "Now we tell the world. Because this, my complete healing, it's proof. Proof that stopping the medication works. Proof that other kids who've been hurt like me can heal. Proof that truth and courage matter. How do we tell the world?" Owen pulled out his phone. "We call Rebecca Lawson. We do another interview. And this time, we don't just talk about what was done to me. We talk about what's possible when you fight for truth. When you refuse to accept injustice. When a poor girl with nothing decides that a rich boy's sight matters more than her safety." Peyton's eyes widened. "Owen, I know you don't need recognition, but you deserve it. And more importantly, other kids need to see what you did. They need to know that they can make a difference too. That being small or poor or young doesn't mean being powerless." He was already dialing, his face set with determination that Peyton recognized. This was Owen at his most fierce, not angry, but purposeful, using his voice and his story and his platform to change things. "Rebecca Lawson," a voice answered. "Ms. Lawson, it's Owen Vincent. I have news. My vision is completely restored. Perfect 20/20ths. And I want to do a follow-up interview. But this time, I want Peyton there with me. I want the world to hear her story, not just mine. Can you make that happen?" A pause. Then, "Owen, that's incredible news. And yes, absolutely yes. When can we schedule this?" "As soon as possible. This can't wait." The interview aired 2 weeks later, prime time, with even higher viewership than the first one. Owen and Peyton sat side by side on a studio couch, both dressed nicely. Owen in slacks and a button-down, Peyton in a new dress her mother had bought with her first foundation paycheck. Behind them, a screen displayed photos. Owen blind and withdrawn at the mansion. Owen is laughing with Peyton in the garden. Owen in the courtroom. Owen now, eyes bright and clear. Rebecca Lawson smiled warmly at them both. "Owen, when we spoke last, your vision was improving but still limited. Now you're saying it's completely restored." "Completely," Owen confirmed, looking directly into the camera. "I have perfect vision, better than some people who were born with sight. The doctors say it's remarkable, unprecedented, even. My optical nerves, which were suppressed for 10 years, have fully regenerated." "What do you attribute this recovery to?" "Stopping the medication that was poisoning me. And," Owen glanced at Peyton, "having something worth seeing. Someone who made me want to fight for every bit of vision, every detail, every color." Rebecca turned to Peyton. "Peyton, you've been called a hero. An 8-year-old who exposed a conspiracy and saved a boy's sight. How does that feel?" Peyton shifted uncomfortably. "I'm not a hero. I just saw something wrong and tried to fix it. Anyone would have done the same. But many people didn't. For 10 years, doctors and nurses and staff saw Owen's condition and accepted the official explanation. You didn't." "Why?" Peyton thought carefully. "Because I didn't know I was supposed to. I didn't know that questioning rich people or powerful people or adults was impossible. I just knew Owen was sad and lonely and something felt wrong. So I asked questions and looked for answers. I think maybe being poor helped, actually, because I never learned to be afraid of powerful people. When you have nothing, you've got nothing to lose. Owen reached over and took her hand. She's brave in a way I'm still learning to be. She taught me that some rules are worth breaking, that some fights are worth having, even when you're scared, that being right matters more than being safe. Rebecca leaned forward. Owen, what do you want people to take away from your story? Owen looked directly into the camera, his eyes intense and clear. I want people to know that truth matters, even when it's hard, even when it destroys things, even when it costs everything. Because lies kept me in darkness for 10 years, and truth gave me back my sight. And I want other kids who are suffering in silence to know, you have a voice. You have power. You can fight back, even against people bigger and richer and more powerful than you. He squeezed Peyton's hand. And most importantly, I want people to see what real courage looks like. It looks like a little girl with bare feet and a cracked bucket who decided that justice was more important than safety. It looks like someone who had every reason to stay quiet and invisible, but chose to be loud and seen. That's heroism. That's what changes the world. The interview continued for an hour. They talked about the foundation Harrison was building, the Peyton William Foundation for Medical Justice, named not after Dr. Garrison or the Vincent family, but after the girl who'd exposed the truth. They talked about Owen's relationship with his father, complicated, healing, honest. They talked about what both children wanted for the future, for Owen, to help other kids hurt by medical negligence, for Peyton, to keep being brave and fighting for people who needed fighting for. And by the time the interview ended, there wasn't a dry eye in the studio or in the millions of homes watching. 3 months later, in early spring, when flowers were just beginning to bloom, the Peyton William Foundation for Medical Justice held its opening ceremony. The building was modest, a converted clinic in a neighborhood that needed resources. Not the gleaming tower Harrison's old foundation had occupied, but something real and accessible, something that served people instead of impressing them. Reporters and cameras filled the parking lot. Families affected by medical malpractice came from across the state. Legislators and child advocates stood in the crowd. And at the center of it all, on a small stage decorated with flowers that Owen could finally see in all their glory, stood 4 people. Harrison Vincent, thin and tired from his months in minimum security, but with eyes that held genuine purpose. Diana William, professional and proud, wearing the badge that identified her as the Foundation's Family Services Coordinator. Mrs. Chun, who'd agreed to serve on the Foundation's board. And at the microphone, Owen and Peyton standing side by side. Owen spoke first, his voice steady and strong. 2 years ago, I was blind, not just physically, but in every way that mattered. I couldn't see the world. I couldn't see the truth. I couldn't see my own worth. I lived in darkness created by lies and maintained by fear. He paused, looking out of the crowd. Then a girl with nothing, no money, no power, no reason to care about a rich boy's problems, decided I was worth saving. She broke rules. She risked everything. She fought when everyone told her to be quiet, and she gave me back my sight. He turned to Peyton, who was trying very hard not to cry. This foundation isn't named after my family or our wealth or our guilt. It's named after Peyton William because she represents everything we want to be. Brave enough to speak truth, strong enough to fight injustice, and kind enough to care about people who can't help themselves. He held out his hand. Peyton took it, stepping up to the microphone beside him. I don't have a big speech, Peyton said, her voice small but clear. I'm not good with words like Owen, but I want to say something to kids who are watching. Kids who feel small or powerless or scared. She took a breath, her hand tight in Owen's. You matter. Your voice matters. Your courage matters. And if you see something wrong, even if adults tell you to ignore it, even if powerful people say you're wrong, even if you're scared, speak up anyway. Because one voice can change everything. One person can save a life. I know because I did. And if I can, anyone can. The crowd erupted in applause. People stood, cheering, many openly crying. Cameras flashed. But Owen and Peyton only saw each other, grinning through tears, hands clasped tight. Then Owen did something he'd been planning for weeks. He pulled a small box from his pocket and opened it. Inside were 2 matching bracelets, simple woven cord, nothing expensive, but beautiful in their simplicity. Each had a small charm, one shaped like an eye, one shaped like a light bulb. Peyton William, he said formally. Will you accept this bracelet as a symbol of our friendship? Forever friends, no matter what." Peyton laughed through her tears. "Yes, you dramatic goofball. Of course, yes." He tied one bracelet around her wrist, and she tied the other around his. The crowd ed audibly. Harrison stepped to the microphone, and the crowd quieted. "I don't deserve to speak here," he said quietly. "I'm the villain of this story, not the hero. But I want to say something publicly, so there's no doubt, no ambiguity." He looked at Owen and Peyton. "Peyton William, you saved my son when I was destroying him. You fought for him when I was betraying him. You loved him when I'd forgotten how. And I will spend the rest of my life trying to earn a fraction of the grace you've shown our family." He turned to the crowd. "This foundation will help families hurt by medical negligence. We'll provide legal support, medical advocacy, therapy services, and financial assistance. We'll fight for children who've been harmed by the very systems that should protect them. And we'll do it in Peyton's name, because she showed us what real justice looks like." His voice broke. "She showed us that truth matters more than reputation. That courage matters more than comfort. That a child with nothing can have more integrity than a millionaire with everything. And I pray that somehow, some way, working for the rest of my life to help other families might begin to balance the scales for what I did to my own son." He stepped back from the microphone. The crowd applauded, but it was muted, recognition of effort, not absolution. Harrison didn't expect absolution. He'd long since accepted he didn't deserve it. But Owen stepped forward and did something that shocked everyone. He hugged his father. It was brief, still awkward, still weighted with pain and healing and complicated forgiveness. But it was real. "Thank you," Owen whispered, quiet enough that only Harrison could hear, "for finally being the dad I needed." Harrison's arms came around his son, and for a moment, he let himself hope that redemption might actually be possible. After the ceremony, there was a reception in the foundation's community room. Owen and Peyton escaped the crowd, slipping out to the small garden behind the building. It wasn't much yet, just newly planted flowers and a single bench, but it was peaceful. They sat together, watching the sunset paint the sky in colors Owen could finally name. Orange like joy, pink like hope, purple like the mystery of what came next. "We did it," Peyton said softly. "We actually did it." "You did it," Owen corrected. "I just stopped taking poison and learned to speak up. We did it together." Peyton bumped his shoulder. "Partners." "Partners," Owen agreed. He looked at the bracelet on his wrist, the little eye charm catching the fading light. "Peyton, can I tell you something? Always. I used to think sight was the most important thing. That if I could just see, everything would be perfect. But it's not about physical seeing. It's about really seeing truth, seeing people for who they really are, seeing what matters." He turned to her, his perfect vision taking in every detail of his best friend. "I can see colors and shapes now, and that's amazing. But the most important thing I can see is you. Your courage, your kindness, your stubborn refusal to accept injustice. That's the sight that saved my life. Not the physical vision, the ability to see what's real and true and worth fighting for." Peyton wiped her eyes. "You're going to make me cry again." "Good. Happy tears are the best kind." Owen stood, holding out his hand. "Come on, let's go back inside. We have a foundation to help run, families to support, and a whole future to build." Peyton took his hand, and they walked back toward the building where light spilled from windows and voices rose in hope and celebration. Two children who'd been through darkness and found light, who'd fought for truth and won, who'd learned that the strongest power in the world wasn't money or status or physical ability. It was courage, love, and the refusal to accept injustice. Behind them, the sun set in glorious color. Ahead of them, through the lit windows of the foundation, people gathered to do good work and help hurting families. And between them, an unbreakable bond forged in mud and gardens, and midnight tree climbing and the fierce determination to save each other. The darkness was over. The light had won. And the best part? This was just the beginning. Justice had been served. Redemption had been offered. Truth had triumphed. And two children who'd started with nothing but courage had changed the world. But there's one more chapter to this story. The beautiful aftermath, the years later. The proof that happy endings are real and lasting. Are you ready for the conclusion? Drop a comment and tell me how you're feeling. This story has been a journey, and I'm so grateful you've been here for every moment. Owen Vincent stood at his bedroom window on the morning of his 16th birthday, watching the sunrise paint the sky in familiar colors. Orange is like joy, pink like hope, purple like possibility. He'd been watching sunrises for 5 years now, ever since that winter morning when his vision had fully restored, and they still took his breath away. Every single one felt like a gift he'd almost lost, a miracle he'd almost never experienced. His phone buzzed. A text from Peyton. "Happy birthday, old man. Ready for your surprise?" Owen grinned. Peyton and her surprises. In the 5 years since the foundation's opening, she'd surprised him with everything from a painting class, where they'd both been terrible but had fun anyway, to a hot air balloon ride, where Owen had finally seen what clouds look like from above, to last year's memorable incident involving a puppy, a cake, and complete chaos. "I'm terrified. What are you planning?" "You'll see. Be ready by 10. We're something nice, but comfortable." And Owen? "Trust me. Always." He meant it. In 5 years, Peyton had never steered him wrong. She'd been beside him through everything. Harrison's prison sentence and subsequent release, the foundation's growing pains and eventual success. Owen's struggles with PTSD from the medical trauma, the media attention that had slowly faded into blessed normalcy. They'd started high school together last year, both attending the public school in their neighborhood. Owen could have gone to private school. Harrison's legal settlements had left enough for that. But he'd chosen to stay with Peyton. Some things mattered more than prestige. Downstairs, the smell of pancakes and coffee filled the small house that had become home. Owen descended the stairs, his hand trailing the banister not for guidance, but for the simple joy of texture against his palm. Harrison stood at the stove, flipping pancakes with the focused attention he now brought to everything. 5 years had changed him almost as much as they'd changed Owen. Prison time, even just 14 months before work release, had stripped away the last vestiges of the man who'd valued reputation over truth. What emerged was quieter, humbler, and infinitely more present. "Happy birthday, son," Harrison said, sliding a stack of chocolate chip pancakes onto a plate. 16. I can hardly believe it. Me neither. Owen sat at the kitchen table, watching his father move through the morning routine. "Is Mrs. Chun coming over later?" "She wouldn't miss it. She's bringing enough food to feed an army, as usual." Harrison joined Owen at the table with his own plate. So what does 16-year-old Owen want that 15-year-old Owen didn't have? Owen thought about it. 5 years ago, he wanted sight. 4 years ago, he wanted normalcy. 3 years ago, he'd wanted his father to come home from prison. 2 years ago, he'd wanted the nightmares about medical procedures to stop. Honestly, nothing. I have everything that matters. Harrison's throat worked with emotion. "You've grown into a remarkable young man. Despite everything I did to hurt you, you've chosen kindness and purpose. I'm proud of you, Owen. So incredibly proud." Their relationship would never be simple. There were still hard days when Owen remembered the betrayal and felt anger rise like bile. Still therapy sessions where they worked through trust and forgiveness and the complicated aftermath of trauma. But there was also this, peaceful mornings, honest conversations, a father learning to be present, and a son learning to allow him in. "Dad," Owen said carefully, "I've been thinking about something. The foundation has helped almost 200 families now. We've changed laws, improved medical oversight, given people justice they thought was impossible. Thanks to you and Peyton. You two are the heart of everything we do. But there are more kids out there. More families are being silenced because they don't have resources or knowledge or courage. I want to expand. I want to take what we've learned and replicate it in other states. Build a network of foundations, all working together." Harrison set down his fork, studying his son's face, so much older than 16, in some ways. Trauma did that, but also filled with hope and determination that 16-year-olds were supposed to have. That's ambitious, and expensive, and exactly the kind of vision we need. Harrison smiled. "Let's make it happen. You and Peyton put together a proposal, and we'll present it to the board next month." "Really? Just like that?" "Owen, I've learned something in 5 years of doing this work. When you and Peyton decide something needs to happen, it's going to happen whether I help or not. I'd rather be part of the solution from the beginning." Owen laughed. Fair point. After breakfast, he got ready for whatever surprise Peyton had planned. choosing jeans and a nice shirt, the nice but comfortable she'd specified. At exactly 10 a.m., there was a knock at the door. Peyton stood on the porch, 13 years old now, and somehow still managing to radiate the same fierce energy she'd had at 8. She'd grown taller, her hair longer, her features sharpening toward the young woman she'd become. But her eyes held the same brightness, the same stubborn refusal to accept injustice. "Ready?" she asked, grinning. "Do I have a choice?" "No. Come on." Diana's car was in the driveway, with Diana herself in the driver's seat. She'd changed too over the years, less worn down, more confident. The foundation job had given her not just financial stability, but purpose. She coordinated services for families, speaking at conferences and legislative hearings with the authority of someone who'd lived through poverty and come out fighting. "Where are we going?" Owen asked as he climbed into the back seat beside Peyton. "You'll see," both women said in unison, then laughed. The drive took 40 minutes, winding out of the city into rural countryside. Owen watched the scenery, still marveling at the simple fact of seeing it, still cataloging colors and details like they were treasures. The trees were full with late spring growth, so many shades of green he couldn't count them all. The sky was cloudless blue, the kind that went on forever. Finally, Diana turned down a long gravel driveway. At the end stood a sprawling property, not a mansion, but a large, beautiful house surrounded by acres of land. Gardens were being planted. Construction equipment sat near what looked like outbuildings being renovated. "What is this place?" Owen asked. Peyton grabbed his hand, practically vibrating with excitement. "Come see." She dragged him out of the car and toward the main building. A banner hung over the entrance. The Owen and Peyton Center for Healing. Opening fall 2024. Owen stopped dead. "What?" Diana came up beside them, her eyes suspiciously bright. The foundation board voted unanimously to establish a residential facility for children recovering from medical trauma. Somewhere they can heal, physically and emotionally, surrounded by people who understand. Therapy, education, recreation, all in a safe space designed specifically for them. And they named it after us. Owen's voice cracked. "They tried to name it just after you," Peyton said. "But I told them absolutely not. We're a team, remember? Partners. So it's both of us or neither of us." She was very insistent, Diana added, smiling. Threatened to quit the foundation if they didn't include her name. At age 13. "Because it's the truth," Peyton said firmly. "We did this together. You survived it. I helped expose it. And together we turned it into something good. That's the whole story, not just half of it." Owen looked at the building, beautiful and hopeful, ready to help children like he'd been. Children trapped in darkness, whether literal or metaphorical. Children who needed someone to see them, fight for them, prove they were worth saving. "Can we go inside?" he whispered. Peyton grinned. "I was hoping you'd ask." The interior was still under construction, but the vision was clear. Bedrooms designed to feel safe, not clinical. A library with books and braille materials. An art therapy room with windows overlooking gardens. A sensory space for children with visual impairments to explore texture and sound. A common room with comfortable furniture and warm colors. Nothing like the sterile medical environment Owen remembered from Mansion. "Each child will have a personalized treatment plan," Diana explained as they walked through. "Medical care, obviously, but also therapy, education, and family support. We're not just treating conditions, we're healing kids." In what would become the main activity room, someone had already installed the first piece of equipment, a climbing wall with various textures and grips designed for both sighted and visually impaired children. Owen touched the wall, feeling the different surfaces. Smooth here, rough there, some sections that were almost soft. "This is incredible." "It was Peyton's idea," Diana said. She insisted that healing should include play and challenge, not just safety. That kids need to feel brave, not just protected. Owen looked at Peyton, who was blushing. "I just remembered how much it meant when we climbed that tree. How you needed to do something scary and difficult. How that was part of healing too." "You've always understood," Owen said softly. "Right from the beginning. You saw what I needed before I knew myself." They continued the tour, ending in what would become the garden. Acres of space for growing things, playing, exploring. A fountain was being installed, similar to the one at the Vincent Mansion, but smaller, more accessible. We're going to have garden therapy, Peyton explained, letting kids touch soil and plants, describe the world to each other, learn about growth and seasons. All the things we did together, but structured and supported. Owen stood in the center of the future garden, turning slowly to take it all in. This place would help hundreds of children, maybe thousands over the years. And it existed because he and Peyton had refused to accept darkness. Thank you, he said, looking at Peyton and Diana. This is the best birthday present anyone could ever receive. Well, there's one more thing, Peyton said, suddenly shy. She pulled something from her backpack, a familiar object that made Owen's breath catch. The cracked yellow bucket, 5 years old now, even more battered, but carefully preserved. Owen had kept it on his bookshelf, a reminder of where everything began. I want to bury this, Peyton said quietly. Here in the garden, plant a tree over it, so it becomes part of this place. A reminder that healing starts with simple things, mud and play, and someone caring enough to see you. Owen took the bucket, running his fingers over the familiar cracks and worn handle. This bucket had held Peyton's childhood treasures, had been with her through homelessness and hardship, had been present the day she'd first led him to the mud and taught him that the world could be kind. A time capsule, he said. Exactly. We'll put things inside it. Notes about what we hope for this place. Maybe some pictures. The medical files that started everything. Copies, anyway. So future kids know that speaking up matters, that truth wins, that they're not alone. They spent the next hour creating their time capsule. Owen wrote a letter to the future children who would heal here. I was blind for 10 years because powerful people chose lies over truth. I was silent because I thought I was a burden. I was alone because I didn't know I was worth fighting for. Then a girl with nothing taught me I was worth everything. Whoever you are, reading this years from now, you are worth fighting for. Your voice matters. Your healing matters. And the people in this place will see you, really see you, the way Peyton saw me. Speak your truth. Demand justice. And never, ever let anyone tell you that you're too young, too small, or too powerless to change the world. You can. I know because I did. With hope and healing. Owen Vincent. Peyton wrote her own letter. To the brave kids who will walk through these doors. I wasn't special. I was just a poor girl who asked questions and refused to accept that wrong was right. And that was enough. You don't need money or power or special abilities to make a difference. You just need courage and stubbornness and the belief that people are worth saving. This building exists because one friendship mattered more than fear. Because truth mattered more than safety. Because love, real, fierce, protective love, is stronger than any system or institution or lie. Be brave. Be stubborn. Be kind. And know that the people here believe in you, fight for you, and see you for who you really are. Forever your friend, Peyton William. They added photos. Owen blind, sitting alone at the mansion fountain. Peyton at 8, barefoot and fierce. Both of them at the foundation opening. Recent pictures of them laughing, studying, living the normal life that had once seemed impossible. Diana added the original lab report confirming the Neuraxin in Owen's medication. Proof that truth could be discovered, that cover-ups could be exposed. Harrison, who'd arrived during the tour, added his own letter. A confession and apology that would serve as a reminder that even people who'd caused harm could choose redemption. They buried the bucket in the center of the future garden, in a hole already prepared. Then they planted a tree, an oak, strong and enduring, the same kind Peyton and Owen had climbed together 5 years ago. This tree will grow, Diana said, patting soil around the sapling. In 20 years from now, 30 years, 50 years, it'll be huge and strong. Kids will climb it and play in its shade. And underneath, this bucket and these letters will remind everyone that healing started with 2 brave children and a cracked piece of plastic that held treasures. They stood in a circle around the newly planted tree. Owen, Peyton, Diana, Harrison, and Mrs. Chun, who'd arrived with enough food for the construction crew and everyone else. Should we say something? Peyton asked. Make it official. Owen thought for a moment. Then, how about a promise? We each promise something to this place, to the kids who'll come here. I'll start, Harrison said. His voice was quiet but firm. I promise to spend the rest of my life making sure what happened to Owen never happens to another child. I promise to use whatever influence and resources I have left to protect the vulnerable instead of the powerful. And I promise to tell my story, all of it, even the shameful parts, so that other parents learn from my mistakes. Diana went next. I promise to fight for every family that walks through these doors, to believe them when they say something's wrong, to stand with them against institutions and systems and anyone who tries to silence them. And I promise to teach my daughter that the courage she showed at 8 years old matters just as much at 13, at 30, at 80. Mrs. Chin wiped her eyes. I promise to love every child who comes here the way I've loved Owen, to see them, truly see them, not as cases or conditions, but as precious souls deserving of dignity and care. And I promise to never, ever stop believing in miracles, because I've witnessed one. Peyton squeezed Owen's hand. I promise to keep asking questions, even when I'm told to be quiet, to keep fighting for truth, even when lies are easier. And I promise Owen that no matter how many years pass or how much life changes, we're forever friends, partners, a team. Owen's voice was thick with emotion. I promise to use my sight, all of it, physical and metaphorical, to see injustice and call it out, to see suffering and alleviate it, to see people who feel invisible and make them seen. And I promise to honor what Peyton gave me by giving it forward, to every child who walks into this center, to every family seeking justice, to every person who thinks they're not worth saving. They stood in silence, the weight of their promises settling like a blessing over the freshly turned earth. Then Peyton, ever practical, broke the moment. Okay, now can we eat? Mrs. Chin brought food, and I'm starving. Everyone laughed, and the solemnity broke into celebration. That evening, back at Owen's house, a small birthday party filled the modest living room with warmth and noise. Mrs. Chin had indeed brought enough food for an army. Diana had made Owen's favorite cake, chocolate with vanilla frosting, simple and perfect. Friends from school came, along with foundation staff and families who'd been helped over the years. Owen stood in the center of it all, watching people laugh and talk and simply be together, and felt overwhelming gratitude. This was what life looked like on the other side of darkness. Not perfect. There were still hard days, still therapy sessions, still moments when the past felt too heavy. But it was real and honest and full of people who loved him. Later, after most guests had left, Owen found himself in the backyard with Peyton. They sat on the ground beneath the small tree they planted 3 years ago. Not as grand as the mansion's oak, but there's in a way that mattered. The sun was setting, the sky doing that thing it did where colors blended into something that looked like music felt. Owen had tried a dozen times to describe sunsets to people who'd never seen them, and he never quite captured it. Some miracles defied words. Peyton, he said quietly, can I tell you something I've never told anyone? Always. Sometimes I dream I'm blind again, that I wake up and the darkness is back and all of this, the sight, the healing, the foundation, everything, was just a dream I had in the blackness. Peyton took his hand, and then what happens? I wake up for real, and I can see, and every single time I cry, because I remember how close I came to never experiencing this. Color and light, and your face and sunsets and all of it. I came so close to losing it forever. But you didn't. Because of you. Because of us. Peyton corrected. You had to be brave enough to stop taking the poison, to confront your dad, to fight back. I just helped you remember you were worth fighting for. Owen turned to look at her. Really look. The way he'd been looking at everything for 5 years, like sight was a gift that could vanish. She was 13, on the edge of growing up, but still holding on to childhood. Still fierce and stubborn, and absolutely beautiful in her refusal to accept injustice. When we're older, Owen said carefully, when we're adults and running this foundation together and changing the world together, I hope we're still exactly like this. Still sitting under trees and watching sunsets and reminding each other what matters. We will be, Peyton said with absolute certainty. Some friendships don't fade. They just grow stronger and deeper and more important. We're that kind of friendship, Owen. The forever kind. Promise. I promise. We buried a bucket with our promises in it today, remember? We're literally rooted to this work, to each other, to the commitment we made. You're not getting rid of me. Owen laughed. I would never want They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sky shift from orange to pink to purple. The colors Owen had learned to name from Peyton's descriptions 5 years ago, and now knew intimately through his own sight. Owen. Peyton's voice was quiet. Do you forgive him? Your dad. It was a question she'd never asked directly before. They'd talked around it, discussed his healing and their relationship, but never the core question. Had Owen forgiven Harrison? I'm working on it, Owen said honestly. Some days, yes. Some days, no. Some days I understand that he was broken too, making terrible choices out of fear and pride. Other days I just feel angry that he stole 10 years from me. That's fair, but I'm trying. Because holding on to anger hurts me more than him. And because he's actually doing the work, really changing, really helping people, really being the father he should have been. I can't erase what he did, but I can decide whether to let it define our future. That's really mature of you. Owen bumped her shoulder. I learned from the best. You taught me that people are complicated, that you can be angry at someone and still love them, that justice and mercy can exist together. I did that. You did that. When you were 8 years old and wise beyond your years. Peyton smiled. I just followed my gut. It said you were worth saving, so I saved you. Best gut instinct in history. They laughed together, the sound carrying across the small yard and the open kitchen window where Harrison and Diana stood side by side, watching the two teenagers who changed everything. They're good together, Diana said softly. Balance each other out. They saved each other, Harrison corrected. Owen gave Peyton purpose and proof that fighting matters. Peyton gave Owen sight and self-worth. I don't think either of them would be who they are without the other. Do you think they'll? Diana stopped, not quite knowing how to phrase the question. End up together romantically? Maybe. They're still young yet. But whether they do or don't, they have something rarer than romance. They have the kind of partnership that changes worlds. The kind of bond that nothing can break. Harrison's voice went rough. The kind of love, platonic or otherwise, that I never gave my son until it was almost too late. Diana put her hand on his shoulder. But you're giving it now. You're doing the work. That counts for something. I hope so. I hope someday I'll have earned a fraction of the grace Owen's already given me. Inside, Mrs. Chun was wrapping leftover food, humming to herself. The house smelled like cake and coffee and the particular warmth that came from people gathering in love and celebration. This was what redemption looked like. Not dramatic or cinematic, but quiet and persistent. Showing up day after day, doing the work, choosing differently. 3 years later, Peyton Williams stood at a podium in the state capitol building, looking out at an audience of legislators, advocates, and media. She was 16 now, poised and confident in a way that came from years of speaking truth to power. Beside her sat Owen, 18 and preparing for college, but not before helping Peyton with his final push. Members of the committee, Peyton said, her voice strong and clear, I'm here to speak in support of Senate Bill 447, the Medical Transparency and Patient Protection Act. She'd written the bill herself, with Owen's help and guidance from foundation attorneys. It mandated transparent reporting of medical errors, prohibited the kind of cover-ups that had stolen Owen's sight, and established patient advocate positions in every hospital. 8 years ago, I was a little girl with no power and no resources. But I had questions. And when I asked those questions, I uncovered a conspiracy that had kept a child blind for 10 years. That conspiracy was possible because there was no mechanism for transparency, no protection for whistleblowers, no consequences for institutions that prioritize reputation over patient welfare. She clicked to the next slide, a photo of Owen at age 10, blind and withdrawn. This is what silence protects. This is what happens when systems can hide their mistakes. A child suffers unnecessarily because powerful people decided the truth was too expensive. Next slide. Owen now, eyes bright and clear, standing at the foundation. This is what truth creates. Healing, justice, change. And it happened because one person, a poor girl with nothing to lose, decided that rules could be broken if they protected wrongdoing. She leaned forward, her eyes scanning the committee members. Senate Bill 447 makes it easier for the next person, the next poor girl or boy or parent or patient, to speak up. It protects them from retaliation. It mandates investigation. It ensures that what happened to Owen Vincent can't happen again. Ms. William, One senator interrupted. Some have argued this bill creates excessive bureaucracy and opens hospitals to frivolous complaints. How do you respond? Peyton didn't hesitate. I respond that a child's sight is worth some bureaucracy. That truth is worth some paperwork. That the burden of transparency is nothing compared to the burden of a 10-year-old living in unnecessary darkness. Owen stood, joining her at the podium. They planned this moment. I'm Owen Vincent, he said, though everyone in the room knew who he was. The boy Peyton saved. I have perfect vision now. I'm heading to college in the fall. I run a foundation that's helped hundreds of families. My life is good, better than I ever imagined when I was blind and hopeless. He paused, emotion flickering across his face. But I lost 10 years. 10 years of seeing my father's face, sunsets, colors, the beauty of the world. 10 years of childhood that was stolen by a system that protected itself instead of me. And I'm one of the lucky ones. I got my sight back. Many victims of medical negligence never recover. They live with the consequences while institutions face none. This bill, Peyton continued, isn't about punishing healthcare workers who make honest mistakes. It's about preventing the cover-up of those mistakes. It's about ensuring that when something goes wrong, the patient's well-being comes first, not the institution's reputation. And it's about empowering the powerless, Owen added, making sure that you don't need to be rich or connected or an adult to demand justice, that a child's voice matters. That truth is accessible to everyone. They spoke for 40 minutes, taking questions, presenting evidence, telling stories from the families the foundation had served. By the time they finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the chamber. The bill passed the committee unanimously. 3 months later, it became law. The Peyton Vincent Act, named after both of them this time, whether they wanted it or not, revolutionized medical transparency in the state. Within 2 years, 5 other states had adopted similar legislation. And it all started with a barefoot girl and a cracked yellow bucket and the stubborn belief that truth mattered more than safety. 5 more years later, Owen Vincent, 23 years old with a master's degree in public health, stood in the garden of the Owen and Peyton Center for Healing and watched children play. The center had been open for 8 years now, helping hundreds of children recover from medical trauma. The oak tree they planted over the buried bucket was strong and tall, its branches perfect for climbing. And climb them the children did, laughing and challenging themselves and learning that healing included bravery. Peyton was inside, conducting an art therapy session. Through the window, Owen could see her surrounded by kids, all of them painting or drawing or sculpting, expressing trauma through creativity instead of words. She was 21 now, finishing her degree in child psychology, but she'd never really left the foundation. This place was in her blood, as much a part of her as her stubborn courage and fierce heart. The front door opened, and Harrison emerged, older and grayer but steady. He volunteered at the center 3 days a week, reading to children, helping with adaptive technology for the visually impaired, telling his story to parents who struggled with guilt. Owen, he said, joining his son in the garden, the board meeting is starting soon. You're presenting the expansion proposal, right? Peyton and I both are. We're recommending centers in 5 new states over the next 3 years. Harrison smiled. You two are going to change the entire country, aren't you? We're going to try. They stood in comfortable silence, watching a little girl with a visual impairment navigate the garden using texture paths and audio cues. She was laughing, confident, clearly healing. Owen, Harrison said quietly, I know I say this often, but I need to say it again. Thank you for giving me the chance to be part of this. For letting me help build something good out of the worst thing I ever did. Dad, no, let me finish. You could have shut me out completely. You would have been justified. But you chose mercy. You chose to let me earn back a place in your life. And working here, helping these kids, seeing the impact we're having, it's more than I deserve. But I'm grateful for it every single day. Owen turned to his father, seeing the genuine remorse and commitment that had replaced the pride and fear of years ago. I forgive you, he said simply. Harrison's breath caught. Owen, I forgive you. Not because what you did was okay. It wasn't. Not because the pain is gone. It's not. But because holding on to anger was poisoning me the same way Nuraxin did. And because you've spent 13 years actually changing, actually doing better, actually being the father you should have been. Tears streamed down Harrison's face. Thank you. Thank you, son. They embraced, no longer awkward, no longer weighted with unspoken pain. Just a father and son who'd found their way through darkness to something resembling peace. The thing is, Owen said, pulling back, Peyton taught me something important. She taught me that people are worth fighting for, even when they've hurt you, even when they've failed you, because everyone deserves the chance to be better than their worst mistake. She's a remarkable young woman. She's my best friend, my partner, the person who saved my life and keeps making it worth living every single day. Have you told her that recently? Owen smiled. I'm about to. The board meeting went exactly as planned. Owen and Peyton presented their expansion proposal with the polish of people who'd been doing this for years. Charts, budgets, testimonials from families, evidence of impact. The board approved unanimously, allocating funds for 5 new centers across the country. After the meeting, Owen caught Peyton before she could disappear into another task. Walk with me. She raised an eyebrow. We have 3 more meetings today. They can wait. Please. Something in his voice made her agree. They walked through the center's grounds, past the gardens and play areas, to their oak tree. It was massive now, trunk thick and branches spreading wide. Children had carved their initials into the bark, marking the place where they'd healed. Remember when we planted this? Owen asked, touching the rough bark. Of course. We buried my bucket and wrote letters to the future. Think those kids ever dug it up? I hope not. I like thinking it's still there, holding our promises, holding the story of where all this started. Owen sat beneath the tree, and Peyton joined him. They'd sat like this hundreds of times over the years, processing hard days, celebrating victories, simply being together in the comfortable silence of people who knew each other completely. Peyton, I need to tell you something. Okay. I'm applying for a fellowship with the World Health Organization. They work on medical ethics and patient rights globally. It's based in Geneva. 2 years. Peyton's face went carefully neutral. That's amazing, Owen. You'd be incredible at that. I'd be gone for 2 years. I know. Away from the foundation. Away from this place. Away from, he stopped. Away from you. Peyton was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was steady but soft. Is this what you want? I want to expand the work we're doing. Take what we've learned here and apply it globally. Help reform systems in countries where patients have even fewer rights than they did here. That's not what I asked. I asked if it's what you want. Owen met her eyes, those green eyes with gold flecks that he'd memorized 13 years ago. I want to change the world, but I don't want to do it without you. Then don't. Peyton, apply for the fellowship. If you get it, take it. Do the work you're meant to do. Her voice was fierce. But know that I'll be here when you get back. This foundation, this work, this friendship, it's not going anywhere. You're not going to lose me by growing and changing and pursuing your purpose. How can you be so sure? Because we're forever friends, remember? We made that promise when we were kids, and I've never broken a promise to you. Not in 13 years. I'm not starting now. Owen felt something loosen in his chest. I love you, Peyton William. I don't know if it's romantic or platonic or something in between, but I love you in every way a person can love another person. You're the most important relationship in my life. Peyton took his hand, squeezing tight. I love you too, Owen Vincent. Same answer, all the ways. And whatever form that love takes, whether we stay best friends forever or something more develops, it doesn't change the fundamental truth. We're partners. We're a team. We're the people who saved each other and chose to spend our lives saving others. So you're okay with me going? I'm okay with you being exactly who you're meant to be. And if that means 2 years in Geneva learning how to change global systems, then go. Do incredible work. Make the world better. And know that I'm here, doing the same thing. And we're still connected even across continents. What did I do to deserve you? Peyton smiled. That crooked smile he'd memorized years ago. You were brave enough to follow a poor girl with a cracked bucket into the mud. Everything else is just details. They sat beneath the tree as the sun set, 13 years after they'd first met, 8 years after the foundation opened, 5 years after the bill passed, and on the edge of whatever came next. The sky turned orange and pink and purple, the colors Owen had learned to name from Peyton and now saw with perfect clarity. Whatever happens, Owen said softly, wherever we go, whatever we become, promise me we'll always come back here. To this tree. To this place where we buried our promises and planted hope. I promise, Peyton said. This is our beginning. It'll always be here, reminding us who we are and why we started fighting. Forever friends. Forever friends. They watched the sunset together. Two people who'd started with nothing but courage and built an empire of healing. Who'd faced darkness and chosen light. Who'd been broken by systems and rebuilt those systems to protect instead of harm. And beneath them, buried deep in the earth, a cracked yellow bucket held letters and photos and promises. A time capsule of the moment when everything changed. When a millionaire son was born blind, and a poor little girl discovered the shocking truth that set him free. Epilogue. 20 years later. The plaque beside the massive oak tree read, "This tree was planted by Owen Vincent and Peyton William in 2024, the year the Owen and Peyton Center for Healing opened its doors. Beneath its roots lies a time capsule containing their promises to the children who would heal here. Some friendships change the world. This one changed how the world treats its most vulnerable." Owen Vincent William and Peyton Vincent William stood beneath that tree, watching their own children play in the garden. They'd married 5 years ago, not because it was expected, but because their partnership had deepened into romance so gradually and naturally that formalizing it felt like acknowledging what had always been true. The foundation had expanded to 42 centers across 12 countries. The Peyton Vincent Act had been adopted in 37 states and inspired similar legislation internationally. Medical transparency had become the standard, not the exception. And thousands of children, thousands, had been saved because 2 kids had refused to accept that darkness was permanent. "Do you ever regret it?" Owen asked, watching their daughter climb the oak tree with fearless confidence. "Tying your whole life to mine? Does this work?" Peyton looked at him like he was ridiculous. "Are you kidding? This is the best life I could have imagined. We're literally changing the world, raising amazing kids, and still best friends after 33 years. What's to regret? I just want to make sure you know, you could have done anything, been anything. You didn't have to spend your whole life fighting the battle we started as kids." Owen. Peyton took his face in her hands. "I didn't spend my life fighting the battle we started. I spent my life fighting battles worth fighting, with a partner worth fighting beside. There's nowhere else I'd rather be, nothing else I'd rather do, and no one else I'd rather do it with." Owen kissed her, still amazed after 5 years of marriage and 33 years of friendship that this fierce, stubborn, beautiful person had chosen him. "Thank you," he whispered against her lips, "for everything, for seeing me when I was invisible, for fighting when I was silent, for loving me through blindness and sight, and everything in between." "Always," Peyton said. "Forever and always." Their daughter called from the tree, "Daddy, I can see the whole world from up here." Owen laughed, that rusty sound that had become warm and frequent over decades of joy. "Can you describe it? Everything's green and bright and beautiful, and the sky is so blue it feels like hugging." Peyton and Owen looked at each other and smiled. Their daughter was learning the same language they'd invented 33 years ago. Colors as feelings, sight as emotion, the world as something to be experienced with all senses. The legacy continued. The light kept growing, and the cracked yellow bucket buried beneath the oak tree held promises that had been kept, exceeded, and passed on to a new generation. Somewhere, a child was being harmed by a medical system that prioritized reputation over truth. But because of Owen and Peyton, because of their courage and love and refusal to accept injustice, that child would have advocates, resources, hope. They would have light in the darkness. And it all started with a poor little girl who looked at a blind boy and saw not a tragedy, but a person worth fighting for. Some stories end with happily ever after. This one ended with, and they changed the world, together, forever. Final message to you, beautiful viewer. Thank you. Thank you for staying with Owen and Peyton through every moment of this journey. From darkness to light, from silence to advocacy, from brokenness to healing. I want to hear from you one last time. What moment made you cry? What part will you remember years from now? Drop a comment and share your heart with me. And if this story moved you, if it changed how you see courage or friendship or the power of speaking truth, please subscribe to this channel, because there are more stories like this waiting to be told. More reminders that ordinary people can do extraordinary things. More proof that love and truth always win in the end. Owen and Peyton's story is over, but yours is still being written. Be brave. Be stubborn. Be the person who speaks up when everyone tells you to be quiet. Be the light someone else needs to find their way out of darkness. You never know whose life you might save. Until the next story, stay strong, stay kind, and remember, you matter more than you know. Now go subscribe, leave a comment, and share this story with someone who needs to believe that happy endings are real. Red Heart.